Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Deadliest Warrior podcast.
Woo.
This week, we are covering Jesse James versus Al Capone. A fan favorite of ours, actually. When we were doing casting call for this episode, this was the most requested episode. Everybody wanted a piece of Jesse James, but the winner was our guest. Long previewed on this show, long foreshadowed, our buddy RJ. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me. Actually a big fan of the show, so it's a dream come true.
We figured we roast you sometimes on the show. You never have a chance to defend yourself. Now you're here.
What jokes am I going to use now?
Just to get it out of the way, I'm your host, Matt Davis, and I'm joined by my fellow hosts,
Craig Taylor
and
Woody.
Yeah.
I'm Lucas, representing, obviously, Jesse James today. My number one pick for this season.
Yeah.
And then as we started getting into this episode and I rewatched it, I remembered that I kind of hate this episode.
That's a recurring pattern with you in this show, is having a fond memory of it and then rewatching it and then changing your mind.
Yeah. It's almost like majority of the show is just crap.
Yeah, RJ, you said something to me earlier where you rewatched like Shaka Zulu and William Wallace.
Yeah, so I was rewatching actually your episode of it.
Yeah,
and I was
thank you.
Laughing the whole time, enjoying myself, and then I was like, you know what? Let me watch the actual episode. I hated it. I couldn't even get through it. So.
Yeah, the show itself, I enjoy watching it now because it cracks me up so much, and I can't wait to get on this podcast and talk about it. But it definitely, I wonder how I ever took it seriously.
Yeah. Did you watch it back in the day?
I did, not as much as you guys, but I did watch it.
Yeah. Well,
I guess after months, I'm already getting fired up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get fired up. I'm just warning everyone. Yeah. After months of doing this show, you think an episode would not be able to like take me off, but here we are.
Yeah, and I remember this being a very hot button episode to talk about at the lunch table. I think because both these guys are kind of well known and kind of cool, but also there's a lot of funny characters in this episode. All the experts are pretty memorable and goofy, and we have maybe the most infamous moment,
biggest meme
besides the e-tool, perhaps. We have the stiletto in this episode, which we will cover. But
my opinion, biggest meme of season 2, hands down.
Yeah. Amount we've talked about that is like insane.
Mm-hmm.
Of like all the weapon controversies, we would always go back to that as like, this is just like ridiculous.
It was so clearly the show showing its hand that like, yeah, we're trying to make these edges even. Like, and any time we see an episode that's like 3 edges against 1, I think about this episode and I think the lengths they went to even it up, and they couldn't do it for that episode.
When I was rewatching this episode, when you were giving me the choice of which side I wanted to be on, I that part happened, and in my head I'm like, all right, well, Bowie Knife's got it, no problem. And I hear edge stiletto.
That used to be a one-liner joke in itself. Like we pass each other and go
critical
edge.
3-inch blade.
Yeah.
Edge stiletto.
Edge.
Yes, you can get
Stiletto.
in between the ribs. That's the important part.
Yeah.
It's like a Copus.
Definitely.
the Bowie knife.
Yeah, exactly. And I also remember us just saying Johnny Lou Frotto's name.
Yeah.
Johnny Lou Frotto.
I remembered it being dumb, but I didn't remember it being spelled literally like Lou Frotto. I'm like, you gotta be fucking
It's
me.
L-E-W. Frotto.
Johnny Lou Frotto. Well, I guess without further ado, let's get into the episode. Our warriors are introduced. Jesse James, the vicious outlaw whose bloody crime sprees made him the most famous bank robber in America, versus Al Capone, the ruthless gangster whose criminal empire bloodied the streets of Depression-era Chicago. Who is deadliest? We get the Jesse James stats. So this time they throw height and weight out the door. Thank God, because it never makes any sense. It hasn't been useful to us since Viking vs. Samurai. So, Jesse James stats: Reign of Terror 1866 to 1876. Members 4 to 8. Crimes, bank robbery, and murder. We get Al Capone stats: Reign of Terror 1922 to 1931. members 10 to 12.
Is that all the mafia is?
Crimes of bootlegging and murder. And I found the member sizes for the gangs to be very interesting.
Yeah, I tried to find research with that, and like, I guess you could argue at what point Al Capone's life did he have like 10 to 12 people or whatever?
Maybe his
Seems
inner
very
circle
arbitrary.
too, like his inner circle of like head bosses with him or something.
Yeah.
That stat just seems like it replaced the height and weight.
Yeah.
In terms of useless. Never come back to it.
Because I thought for the purposes of the show, it's useless because they're still doing a 5-on-5 fight.
Supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly.
So that's another topic we'll get into is like, what are the rules?
Yeah,
They do a 4-on-4 for this one.
And then for the numbers they picked, it seems very, like you said, Lucas, I was thinking like Al Capone theoretically ran like the mob in Chicago. Like why is it 10 to 12 guys?
That makes it even crazier, that amount of money that they say he had at age 26, $100 million in 1920 something.
With only 10 people.
With only 10 people. Yeah.
He took it over, man. And yeah, I just thought that was very interesting. Also, the crimes is funny. I know they wanted to get across like one's a bank robber and one's like a bootlegger, but like Al Capone definitely stole shit, and like Jesse James probably did other types of crimes.
Oh yeah.
I guess moving on, there was a couple things in the intro that I wanted to talk about. In the intro, the actor playing Jesse James, like when they are reading the tagline for Jesse James, you hear him yell, "Get the money."
The vicious outlaw whose bloody crime sprees made him the most famous bank robber in America. Get the money!
Which I thought was really funny because we never hear our Deadliest Warrior stand-ins talk except for in like an ancient language.
Or when they kill somebody.
Or when they go, oh.
So to have an American warrior say like something in English and be like, "Get the money," it's like really goofy. And I don't think Al Capone says anything throughout the whole show.
No.
Jesse James, a little more fiery, I guess. And then throughout this episode, we of course see multiple shots being reused from the Mafia episode, including number 1, the guy with the tiny mustache, and number 2, the fat guy in the bathtub getting killed with the shotgun.
What's funny about that is like they don't use it till like later on in like the in the episode, but like I guess they did it so you see like because he shoots the guy in the bathtub and then like the lights go out for some reason. I guess so, like because he would be fucking like his head would explode at that range, and they're like, well, we don't have the budget for that, so just make all the lights go out after you pull the trigger.
He's dead.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, I also noticed a little bit of a discrepancy, even in the intros, between these two guys. So Jesse James comes off as like a cowboy outlaw who seemed to, the way the show presents it, who ran a small gang and was very often involved in the dirty work himself. Like, no doubt Jesse James has like killed a lot of people by himself and like was there for the bank robberies from what we've seen, whereas Al Capone is portrayed as running like a citywide criminal syndicate and probably didn't like purposely commit all that many crimes himself because he didn't like, he's got guys to do that shit for him. He doesn't want to end up in jail. So we've asked before, what is a warrior on this show? And I remember we talked about how the Mafia, we didn't think fell into the like the same category as like Alexander the Great or GSG-9 or something.
That was the episode that kind of started that whole debate with us.
Yeah.
When it was the Mafia Yakuza episode.
Yeah. So I'm willing to overlook that question this time around, I think, because this episode is very entertaining. So Lucas has some things to say. Before we get into history, I am going to talk about our experts. So for Jesse James gang, we have Joey Dillon, who is billed as a 3-time world champion gunslinger. Now, Joey Rocket Shoes Dillon is in fact a world champion gunslinger. He's an expert handler and trick showman of Western firearms. And then I copy and pasted this part from Wikipedia, so I'm going to paraphrase on the go here. But he's an armorer and gun coach on like a number of films and TV shows. And some of those are The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yeah, that is the one.
Yeah.
That is the one I said was going to be. If you want something good, watch the first 15 minutes of Ballad of Buster Scruggs. It's like an anthology where it's different stories from the West. I think like James Franco and the dude from Holes who is in there.
Shia LaBeouf?
No, the dude who
Like
played like the camp counselor.
the assistant camp counselor.
Yeah, he plays Buster Scruggs. Watch first 15 minutes of that movie. It's good.
Yeah, other movies were like Godless, The Harder They Fall, The Highwaymen.
Was he the armor on Rust?
What other movies was he in?
The world would probably be a better place if he was, if he had been, probably. And HBO's Westworld. So Joey Dillon, you can look him up. He's got his own website. He's easy to find. Joey Rocket Shoes Dillon.
Is
Check
that
him out.
joeydillon.com or joeyrocketshoesdillon.com?
Oh, and I did find that he is in fact a champion gunslinger too. That moniker is not made up. So whatever competitions they do for that thing, he has won them.
I know they have like quick draw competitions
Yeah.
and stuff. I imagine that's what that means.
He's a gunslinger descendant.
And then we get J.W. Wiseman, who's billed as a sharpshooting expert. So I found some funny stuff. JW is also easy to find. JW did grow up in Texas and claims to have won multiple shooting competitions. I couldn't, I'm going to take his word for it, to be honest with you. But his IMDb bio proclaims him as a true-to-life cowboy, which I thought was really funny because he obviously wrote that. Like, what should I write about me? JW is a true-to-life cowboy.
He goes, I'm a true-to-life cowboy.
It's crazy how many experts you can just tell they write their own bios.
Yeah.
Because like whenever you like a normal celebrity, you look them up and you're like, oh well, Martin Sheen doesn't have time to write his IMDb. But then when you get to the experts on Deadliest Warrior, there's a sect of them who write all of their own shit, and you could tell immediately.
But what does make JW legit is he does a lot of acting and stunt work for TV shows and movies, and including multiple episodes of Deadliest Warrior. So that's probably how he got the gig for this episode.
So he was in like The Sims, like the simulation.
Yes, I think so. All I saw in his credits was that he's done like stunt work for it.
The
so.
Sims game, like the video.
That was what I thought first. That was like, you can make them if you
present
want.
themselves very well on the show, though. Like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And go ahead, take a shot every time Joey Dillon spins those stupid.
Oh yeah.
He's just every time they cut to him, he's
You'll be dead by the end of the episode. That is, yeah. Joey Dillon learned one magic trick like years ago, and it's every single time it's on camera. I like to think he was aware of the bit and just like was like, let me see how many times I can get this edited into the fucking show. Just him going, even when he presents for the pistol whip later, he's like, all right. And so what you would do is take this iron here.
Now, but if you could do that, wouldn't you? Like, or would you
it's
be
the
modest?
Michael Layer effect, where if you could do a split, wouldn't you be doing a split when they interviewed you?
Yeah.
And then you go like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of spinning in this. And J.W. Wiseman, he's the funny man on this episode. He's got lots of jokes. I wish we had a cricket sound effect on the soundboard. We do have a sad trombone, so maybe we'll have to hit that a couple times for J-Dubs. But
Oh, you want it?
yeah, throw it on there. Oh man, I guess before we get to the Al Capone experts, let's talk about some Jesse James history. So,
Sure.
The show claims that Jesse James grew up in Civil War era Missouri, and he saw a lot of violence during his childhood, and then he became a guerrilla fighter, killing occupying Union soldiers. This made him a wanted man, so he took to the West, became a bank robber, and his guerrilla warfare skills carried over to making him a successful bank robber. The show also claims the first ever recorded daytime robbery was done by the James Gang. Lucas, I'm going to start with you because I know you're very passionate.
Let's see if the show gets it right, shall we?
Is this an accurate summary of Jesse James? And is there anything you'd like to add to it?
For the most part, the show kind of buys into what happened to a lot with him, where he gets like Robin Hooded almost, where he's made out to be better than he actually is. And I love the show dances around that he was like, his family was part of like, Confederate America. And they're like, he was supported the team opposing the Union. It's like, the Confederates. Yeah. But does guerrilla warfare really help you with a bank robbery when you just walk in and stick your guns up? But they get some stuff right for the most part, but maybe not the daytime bank robbery. So with anyone in this season where it's named people, you could spend like a whole podcast talking about the history. So I shortened this up as much as I could. I'll give you a brief rundown of them. So he was born September 5th, 1847 in Clay County, Missouri, near present-day Kearney. He had 2 siblings and a father, Robert, who had 6 slaves and 100 acres of farmland, which is why his family
canceled.
His father was a priest, too, which is pretty funny because he's a priest but had 6 slaves.
An old priest and slaves.
They don't count.
Yeah. Well, because Missouri back in the day was a border state, so there was kind of like there was a lot of back and forth fighting. But his father actually died when he was 3, trying to participate in the California gold rush. So his mom remarried, so he kind of moved around a bit. So, kind of crappy childhood. It's an excuse, right? He grew up during the Civil War era, which, as I said, Missouri was the border state. So he kind of was there was constant violence back and forth between the anti-slavery and then the slavery. They would do that bushwhacking, which is just kind of quick guerrilla attacks on each other. And they would kill each other, and we got to get revenge, and they would kill each other.
Every night, a group of guys would get drunk, and they'd be like, you know what? Fuck those guys across. Let's go kill some of them. And then they do a couple hit and runs, and then the other faction, like 2 days later, is like,
let's bushwhack them.
You know what? Let's get back at them.
There was like debate on like times that who his mom remarried and stuff, and who he was living with, that some Union kind of bushwhackers came in and tortured his family a little bit, like beat him with whips and tried to hang his new dad.
Who didn't have a messed up childhood in 1860?
You're right.
I can't imagine what was the average life expectancy, like 35? Smallpox came in and like all 4 of your sisters are dead. and you're just like, I guess I made it. What do I do?
Some say there's a million ways to die in the West. Seth MacFarlane, come on the pod. So that's kind of just shaped his entire upbringing. So, of course, he joined the bushwhacker group led by William Bloody Bill Anderson. And then Bloody Bill Anderson was actually killed in an ambush that separated him. His brother joined with him, and it kind of separated them. So at age 17, he received a life-threatening chest wound. He was shot trying to surrender after he ran into a Union cavalry near Lexington. And then his chest wound was tended to by Zerelda Mims, Jesse's first cousin, who would go on to be his wife.
Nice. Was she hot, though?
Is anyone hot?
Right. She had 2 teeth instead of just 1.
He saw her stuck in the washing machine. He knew.
She was stuck under the coffee table. Step brother, no, step cousin, no. So, an old commander from that troop that Jesse was in organized the first daylight armed bank robbery in the United States during peacetime. However, the speculation is that Jesse was not part of this group and was falsely credited with it. The big claim to fame for the show. He was actually still being treated with the chest wound, so a lot of people think he was not part of that, and there's no forensic evidence that places him there. So he became well known as Jesse James the Outlaw as December 7th, 1869. Nice. when he robbed the Davis County Savings Association.
Hey.
He robbed Matt. He claimed he was taking revenge and the daring escape he made with all over the newspapers. This made him the most famous survivor of the former Confederate bushwhackers and the first time he was publicly named an outlaw. He joined with Cole Younger to form the James Younger Gang. Now, whenever the show portrays it as the James Gang, that's not entirely true. Through most points, he was kind of partnered up with another gang.
Okay.
It was like the James Younger Gang and the James Ford Gang. There was always someone else. So they turned to or they went on a string of robberies from like Iowa, Texas, Kansas, just kind of all over the Midwest. And then July 1873, they turned to train robbery, which is another thing. He's arguably almost more famous for his train robberies.
Okay.
But when they robbed the trains, they would wear KKK masks to hide their face.
Just to hide their face.
Yeah. Yeah. The only reason.
So big oof there. So they continued on this string of train robberies, and that's when he was actually by the public also, as well as the show, given the Robin Hood treatment, kind of like the common folk. But there's no supporting evidence that he ever shared his wealth with anyone.
What I'm hearing is that Jesse James is very problematic, and he needs to go to therapy, get his and release a public apology on Twitter, right?
Do better, Jesse.
Jesse James is like, yo, I was at the Dave Guetta concert for George Floyd. It's all good.
Yeah. When he's doing all like the racist stuff and the KKK, like I don't condone that. But when he fucked his cousin, that was when I really crossed the line. That was really fucked up.
He
like,
did have,
damn,
like
dude.
2 kids with his cousin. So in 1874, the Adams Express.
Jesse James Jr. just.
Oh. I was
That's why he
thinking
never
it, but
took on the mantle. He couldn't hold a gun.
I was thinking it, but I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm glad you did it though.
Hey, wasn't the entire population from like 2 people? Okay, so in 1874, the
Adam
Adams
versus Eve.
Yeah, what season of Deadliest Warrior is Adam versus Eve?
Who would win?
Yeah.
Who's next? You decide. So in 1874, the Adams Express Company hired, if you've played Red Dead Redemption 2, get ready, the Pinkerton National Defense Agency to stop the James Younger gang. And Alan Pinkerton, the agency's founder, took it on as a personal vendetta. So in attempted capture, the Pinkertons burned down the homestead, which they were staying in, giving them, which almost gave them amnesty, which is, kind of just getting bailed out, getting, what's that called when you're like forgiven? Pardon. Yeah, they were almost pardoned, but that didn't happen. But it was like real close to getting passed because of that. So Frank then settled down after this because they had a big failed raid on the First National Bank, and only Jesse and his brother survived. So then Frank, his brother, settled down, and Jesse formed a new gang with the Fords to return to crime. So April 1882, after eating breakfast, Jesse noticed a newspaper saying one of his gang members was selling out and was surprised the Fords had not told him. Instead of confronting them, he laid his pistols down on the sofa, and he noticed a dusty picture above a mantel. He stood on a chair to clean it off. Robert Ford drew his weapon and shot the unarmed Jesse James in the back of the head. Let me reread that. Robert Ford drew his weapon and shot the unarmed Jesse James in the back of the head.
We need Meyer Lansky II on here to read that.
Yeah, that was a whole story I had written
Like
down.
4
Robert
octaves.
Ford shot him.
4 octaves too low. Like Meyer Lansky II's on here. He's like, and that little pussy bitch, Robert Ford.
Who shoots an unarmed man?
Have you seen, Lucas? We always gotta ask anytime we got
The spelling of Johnny Lufrato's name, yes. It's Lew.
We're not at Johnny Lou yet. Anytime we have a named warrior, we always talk about movies on here. Braveheart, Alexander. Well, we do have a movie where Brad Pitt played Jesse James called, I believe, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
Dang.
Which is an extremely long name for a movie, and I think it's like a 3-hour long movie. But I think Casey Affleck plays Robert Ford, and he, the lesser Affleck.
Ever heard of him?
Have you ever seen that movie?
I have not, like most movies about the people on the show.
Saw it once, like a long time ago. But yeah, like every movie that's on this show, I try to do prep for you guys. Every movie that's for the show, Braveheart, Alexander, they're all like 3 hours long. And I'm like, God, when can I get like a 90-minute synopsis about like Vlad the Impaler,
That's
They
why
have,
people
like,
watch this show, is for like synopsis like that. We can summarize it,
Yeah, right.
all their weapons.
Yeah.
Did they have a scene with Jesse and his cousin?
Probably. But
So
Okay.
let me wrap this up real quick. I got his death became a sensation, and then the Ford brothers and that coward Robert Ford tried to claim the reward, and they were tried to be hanged for their participation, but they were given a full pardon and given the reward. And there was rumors that Jesse had survived, but of course they were false. And he's buried in a cemetery in Kearney with the original footstones still there if you want to see it.
Wow. Yeah, he definitely is a, like William Wallace, Jesse James is definitely like a figure of myth, I would say. Like, he's sort of an American folk hero in a lot of ways. Yeah. Even though some of the things he did in his life are not necessarily heroic.
There were some pretty cool people in the Wild West, like the Earps and stuff, like we were sheriffs.
Yeah.
Jesse was not as good.
I would argue, though, that he, and I guess this is kind of subjective, but like, I would argue Jesse James is probably the most famous of all of those cowboys, right? Like, Wyatt, I know there's like Wild Bill Hickok and Wyatt Earp and
Billy the Kid.
But I feel like everybody knows who, like, my mom knows who Jesse James is, but probably just because like sexy Brad Pitt played him in a movie, you know?
I feel like the Wild West has, like, when people were famous, it was usually a very short, you had your stint and then you were taken out by the law or killed by a rival gang. So a lot of these guys did stuff that were notable. I think Jesse hung around a lot longer than a lot of outlaws did.
If Jesse James were alive today, like, do you think instead of getting shot in the back of the head, like, he'd be fighting Jake Paul probably for like pay-per-view?
That's what I'm trying to do.
I do have a question about Jesse James for both you guys. Did Jesse James catch that ball?
Yeah. Against the New England Patriots. Yes, he did.
Yes, he did. Yeah, that was a catch, and I'll not hear otherwise. The Patriots should have had to play the Jags that round in the playoffs.
Damn it, Craig, you stole my joke.
Arj, did you have anything more to add on Jesse James on top of that?
Not on top of his biography by Lucas.
He was shot.
I had that he was drafted by the Steelers in the 5th round in 2015.
Yeah, who does Jesse James play for now?
Bears.
The Bears.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. shout out Bears. All right, let's get to the Al Capone experts. First off, we got Meyer Lansky II, mafioso descendant, grandson of the namesake of Meyer Lansky. So I looked this up. He's pretty easy to find, actually. He is the legitimate grandson of Meyer Lansky. When I Googled him, the first thing that came up was his LinkedIn profile. So you can look at what he does for living. He's got like the most normal photo. It's like the photo you would take and put yourself on. It's like he took a selfie like with his phone. It's like kind of cockeyed or whatever. And
does his LinkedIn have mafioso descendant?
No. Deadliest Warrior on it?
I'm sure it did, but it's not at the top. Okay. I'm sorry to say. So it seems like he does a lot of work as a spokesman and like as a resource for different books and like television shows about his grandpa, basically. Which good for him, And he's done multiple interviews you can find with a simple Google search. And my most notable thing about him, which I already brought up, is his voice, his buttery, deep radio voice. Everything he says sounds cool or intimidating.
They were in this business together. Whether they liked each other or not, that's a different story.
Yeah, but both their voices, him and the legend that we'll get to in a minute,
yeah,
neither of them have like super Italian accents. They're just sort of like two white guys.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So that was the one thing that's disappointing about them. That, like,
wasn't Meyer Lansky, I'm about to get this wrong on the internet here and get roasted, but I'm pretty sure Meyer Lansky's whole thing was that he wasn't Italian, he was Jewish.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because he was like a finance guy for the mafia. Yeah, known as the mob. Right, I know, known as the mob's accountant. Yeah.
Okay, well,
yeah, he. So
sorry, Meyer.
It does make sense. Meyer wouldn't be Italian, but Johnny Lufrado, I don't know.
His voice is so low. I was telling you, I have a sound system set up in my house, and I have like the floor bass. It was shaking my living room every time he would talk. I had to like lower the volume down.
He's like, "You didn't mess with Al, and if you did, you got killed." And then, of course, we have the legend, automatic contender for best expert of season 2, Johnny Lufrado.
Yes.
Billed as a Capone authority and son of Midwest mafia boss, cockeyed Louis Frado. one of Al's top lieutenants. So the legend of Johnny. Johnny was, in fact, the son of Louis Frotto. Johnny, while he was alive, was a talent manager and frequent guest on the Howard Stern program.
Wait, what?
Yeah, he frequently guested on Howard Stern and told like some wild stories on there. You can look up some of his episodes if you're a fan of such things. But
Wow.
unfortunately, he passed away in November 2015.
No, are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding.
I saw it too.
So there are a handful of experts we haven't been able to find anything about. So I hope they're all still alive. But this is the first expert I think we've come across that is no longer with us. So rest in peace to Johnny Lou Frotto.
How old was he?
Gosh,
He was born like 67 or something. So like not too
he
old.
wasn't super old.
Yeah, I could be wrong on that also.
He was born in 53 and died.
I was wrong on that also.
He was born in 53 and died in 2015. So, RJ, you're an engineer.
62.
Okay. So
Did
he
you
was
say-
not old. No.
Did you say he was on Jerry Springer?
Howard Stern.
Ah,
Yeah. Much better. Much classier program.
You know, I wasn't a part of these conversations in high school, but when I watched this episode like a month ago, I hated the guy. I couldn't stand him. He was like my least. And one of my favorite things to say is, I hope this person dies. And I did say that, so I feel partially responsible. Even though it was
damn!
7
You
years
heard
ago.
it first here,
Partially
folks.
responsible in reverse.
Do they have a height stat on him?
Before we get into his fame amongst our friend group, I do want to. Last thing I want to say is, his estate had released a book upon his death that you can now pick up, and it's titled "Now That I'm Dead, Here's the Real Dirt."
That's a good title.
Luke is going to order it right now.
He's introduced swinging a baseball bat at the camera. I've always remembered him. Our group cited him all the time for his mannerisms, his name, and some of the funny things he says on this episode. Are you finding anything about the book, Lucas?
Bloody hands.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the reviews for it. Johnny Lufrado equals legend. Couldn't put it down.
What are the 1 stars?
Book sucks. That's all.
Very, very boring.
Oh,
Find
sorry.
it hard to read.
It says book sucks. Very
Book
boring. Find it hard to read. Oh, I love that.
So, controversial book. We'll put a link in the description.
An
below
Amazon
on
link.
An Amazon link. Use code DW Pod to get nothing off your order. So,
How much is it?
$19.99 or $10.
Jeez, how
for
long
digital.
is it?
you guys are making me laugh so much.
You can see when you click on the link how long it is.
It'll say right there.
Where?
Page.
Oh, 304.
$20 for a book. That
You can breeze through 304 pages in a day.
That was the guy who wrote just sucks. I mean, he posted it publicly, so I'm gonna say Johnny Canuck.
definitely was like a rival of his.
I hated his old man, cockeyed Louis Prado, and I hate his son too.
That stupid book.
I'm glad he's in the ground.
I'm a descendant of cockeyed Canuck.
What's one thing? Looking up like Al Capone's history, reading all the old gangster names was like so funny. Like there's so much like how they come up with this shit. It's like Joey Bowlegged or something. Like it's like
Like a Native American name or like a pirate name.
yeah, it was awesome.
So, Craig, the show remarks on Al Capone's brutality and contributes this to a main factor of his rise to the top in the criminal underworld. The show claims he had over $100 million, which, RJ, you looked up by today's standards is like one and a half
billion.
billion. Yeah. He had 100 million by the time he was 26. What are you doing?
What am I doing?
He's in a Woody costume talking about Deadliest Warrior.
I'm sorry. The show also claims that Al had judges, politicians, and police bought off, so there was no one to stop him. Craig, Is this an accurate depiction of Capone, and is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I actually have a lot of research on him. He was an interesting guy. As for, like, yeah, he had a lot of stuff paid off. A lot of people paid off in the government. As for, like, his net worth, I feel like that is adjusted because, like, $1.1 billion in, like, 1920 was, like, the GDP of the United States. Like, so I feel like the 100 million not adjusted for inflation is, like, insane.
Yeah, doesn't like Elon Musk and like Jeff Bezos have like 300 billion though?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the most, even like contemporary like gangsters, like 100 million is like insane, and they have way more like access to, you know, selling their stuff than I think Al Capone did. So I think that is like the modern number, but who knows? He didn't do his taxes, so
It's true.
yeah. And so as for himself, his reign was only, if you look at the dates, was only 7 years, which is kind of crazy because you think like time wise, it was like he was just
Decades.
Yeah, decades. So it was only about 7 years. His gang was called the Chicago Outfit, kind of a cool name if I say so myself. He was born in New York in 1899, and he was kind of like Jesse James, initially seen as a modern day Robin Hood, and he did take pleasure in the attention he'd get in the public. So him helping with prohibition, people obviously wanted alcohol.
It's too bad Al Capone existed before like you could make t-shirts online, because that website, the Chicago Outfit.
Yeah.
Make sure to get our gear. Go on, get your Scarface t-shirt.
Yeah, he just existed at a time where you could run a crime syndicate and be a Robin Hood.
Yeah. So he was viewed positively, but after the St. Valentine's Day massacre, that caused an outcry for his arrest. He was the very first public enemy #1, which I thought was interesting because I was like, is that like an actual term? Like, you know what I mean? Like, where's that? What does that mean?
Did you see Spider-Man No Way Home?
No, I didn't.
They call him public enemy #1, but just
Peter.
Yeah, in the MCU, but in real life, that's not for dorks. He was the very first public enemy #1, and I looked at like the other people, and it's all like gangsters at that time. I imagine it was something that the press came up with, like that's public enemy #1, but it was all people in like the 30s, except for in 2013. You know who was public enemy #1? El Chapo.
Oh, no.
He was the only modern one. So
It's your boy El Chapo.
yeah.
Was shortest reigning public enemy #1 Lee Harvey Oswald
No, he was not on there.
for like a day?
You know who was that I watched a documentary on recently? Machine Gun Kelly. Not the gangster, the rapper.
You mean the guy dating Megan Fox?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's something that so many people would kill for people to call him that now, but it doesn't really actually mean anything. It's just something people,
Yeah.
throw out there. So he was famously sentenced to 11 years in prison for tax evasion. And at the time, I thought this was interesting. It was seen as a landmark option for nailing bootleggers. So it was tough because of the corruption for a lot of, these people to get convictions. And I didn't write down her name, I'm sorry, but someone came up with like a legal proof or published an article saying this is how you could get these bootleggers, is because illegally earned income still has to be taxed. You could theoretically do this. It was like a Supreme Court decision. So it was kind of relatively novel legal move at the time.
How do you report illegal income to pay your taxes on it?
They get you coming and going, So
It's all illegal income, like all the under the table money we get on this podcast from all the sponsors that we have, like
Liquid Death.
Liquid Death.
Sponsor us. RTIC.
Yeah. Hey, Liquid Death, hurry up and get to sponsoring. Also, where is the Dr. Squatch sponsorship? I thought they just gave that shit out if you had a YouTube channel, and it ain't here. I will hype your stuff up so bad, Dr. Squatch. Let's go. Come on. All I get is sketchy emails from like someone in the Czech Republic.
yeah, HelloFresh.
Send me your bank account and I'll insert $100. Yeah,
Yo, careful, don't tweet your bank.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Moving on. Current events. So he hadn't previously incarcerated, but for like a year. But this 11-year prison sentence really turned his life in a direction for the worse. He didn't cope with it well. He suffered from a lot of bullying from other inmates because, if you in there and Al Capone's there, you're going to fuck with him. His cellmate actually was an associate of the Capone gang, and he kind of tried to protect him. but he slowly kind of like regressed and was actually attacked and stabbed in prison, like the laundry room. So did not do very well. He was eventually released on parole, but he more and more got debilitated by his neurosyphilis. So he did. He was married, although like he cheated on her all the time, and so he got like syphilis, and they didn't have penicillin at the time, so it just slowly rotted away his brain. And they say around the time that he was released, or at least right before he died, he had like the mentality of a 12-year-old. So it really fucked with his brain.
Same.
Oh,
69.
Yeah.
Arge. I can think of was that Scrubs, but syphilis. Just Aziz Ansari saying that to Al Capone.
Yeah. So he spent the last year of his prison sentence before he was released very confused and disoriented, basically in like a mental hospital. So yeah, he was let out early due to his condition. His wife kind of petitioned for him, even though it hurt her that he was fucking everybody and getting syphilis. She still was there to bat for him. Wish I could get a woman like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, he died not necessarily of syphilis, but of cardiac arrest after a stroke at the age of 48. So
I just like that you said that he was bullied in jail. He killed hundreds of people, but oh no.
I mean, I don't know how else to
Give him a
describe.
noogie.
Amazing. He
I
just,
got a swirly in prison.
he's like someone's like give him a wedgie. He's like,
Someone looks down at his shoes. Al, what are those?
and then they go,
Oh,
yeah.
What stage syphilis is Al during this episode of Deadliest Warrior?
yeah, that's important to know. We need to know, honestly, what age is Al Capone? Because
That would be relevant.
He's
Yeah.
26. He looks like he's 55.
the age that's dropped is 26, and that stunt actor, he looks like he's in his 40s.
Because this got like a Tony Soprano like impersonation.
Yeah.
For that.
For sure, they just got a guy that looked like Tony Soprano. And when I was watching this, I was like, what season of Deadliest Warrior would we have gotten Tony Soprano versus like Walker Texas Ranger or something?
A few more just couldn't fit him into the timeline, but some fun facts about Al Capone. He was expelled from school at 14 after hitting a female teacher in the face.
That wasn't very fun.
Sick. Well, you know, not so fun facts.
Hey,
Wait,
he's like,
hey, he didn't kill her, all right? He just slapped her around.
she's trying to teach him the Pythagorean theorem. He's like, shut up, bitch. I got syphilis.
Yeah. Where do you think he got the syphilis from? You know what I'm saying? So
His cousin.
yeah, he. This is more of a fun fact. He played semi-pro baseball. That's where he got the.
So I do love that. I love all the old timey baseball guys like Babe Ruth because it's so clearly like before they let black people play baseball, because it's like you got the best baseball player in the world's like
Fat white
an
guy.
out of shape white guy. Like Babe Ruth steps up to the bat. There was some serious athletes back then who probably watched baseball and they were just like, dude,
You gotta be kidding me.
fucking destroy this guy.
Yeah. He lost most of his hearing in his left ear as a child, which, you know, that's not factored into the sim at all. I don't know what that's about. His face was sliced during an altercation, which gave him the nickname Scarface. So if you see, there's a little makeup in Deadliest Warrior about that. He hated the nickname, and he often hid scars during photos. So if he was known, you know, someone's taking a photo of him, he would do a little of that. One of his other nicknames was Snorky, which meant sharp dresser. Apparently, he didn't like Scarface, but he enjoyed Snorky.
Like Snorky.
So it's funny. Can you imagine how many like schmucks today would kill for someone to call him Scarface?
Yeah,
but him back then, he's like, don't call me that. Call me Snorky.
Ma, don't call me Scarface. You got it, Snorky.
Which is, I guess, Italian or maybe slang for sharp dresser.
Yeah.
But Al Snorky Capone. That's it for fun facts.
Yeah. Public enemy number one, Snorky.
Yeah. Sounds like a Star Wars character. Snorky.
Now that we've covered the history, gotten through some goofs and gaffes, it's time we get to the weapons, baby.
I'm glad we had our fun because now I'm about to get pissed.
Our first matchup.
Preview of that earlier.
Our first matchup is the Colt Revolvers versus the Tommy gun, and we're going to spend a little time on this because it's half the episode is this matchup. We're introduced first to the Colt Revolvers, which right off the bat range 100 yards. Interesting. And then we get 3 types of ammo, 36, 38, and 45 caliber. We get a magazine of 6 rounds, I don't know why they call it a magazine. And then
a cylinder. Yeah.
And then it's 2.5 pounds. So first question, which caliber are they using in the sim? We've seen in previous episodes, even this season, that caliber can make a huge difference supposedly in the sim. The 6.8 versus the 5.56, it's a big deal, okay? But right here, it's like, that's like one of 3. And, the Jesse James guys are there, and they're like, well, the James gang carried, upwards of 4 revolvers at a time, and they're looking at it and they're like, these are different barrel lengths, and it's like, I thought this show was about hard science. Now, we know it's not, but it masquerades as like, this is empirical. We're testing by fact who would win. And it's like, you guys haven't even picked a standard gun. And in fact, it's just called the Colt Revolver. It's not like Colt is a manufacturing company. It's like calling it the Toyota car.
Welcome to my grievance relievance 1.
So, Lucas, do you have an idea of the specific Colt that's being used here?
Yeah, that is my number one grievance relievance, that they just give generic names. They use the manufacturer names like it's a blanket for everything ever produced. There's like 500 Colt revolvers that's been produced over the years, 500 like variants.
That's for the people like me though watching the show, Lucas.
You're like,
I don't
Colt,
know.
yeah.
I've heard of that before.
So my assumption, the 36, 38, and 45 is the calibers they give you. 36 and 38, to my knowledge, are black powder cartridges, which are no longer produced. So I'm just going to assume on the show they use a 45 Colt because it's still produced today. So we're going to go with, and that was one of the most popular. So they portray the 45 Colt 1873 Peacemaker is the one that they're actually using in the episode, aka the Single Action Army, which everyone's heard that. And it's one of the most popular 6-shooters of all time, especially during the Western period. So
is it in Red Dead Redemption?
Yes.
Okay.
It's called the Cattlemen Revolver in Red Dead Redemption.
There you go.
So if you don't know about these, the cylinder does not side eject like most modern 6-shooters. Instead, each bullet is hand-loaded and hand-ejected from a side port on the gun's frame. Just a little fun fact for you. That's actually fun.
I'll say this. I'm so relieved to finally have someone on the show that does not care about guns.
Yeah.
That knows exactly how I feel right now.
James did commonly use... He was called kind of an opportunist. He was a robber. He kind of used whatever guns were at his disposal. He didn't have like a Call of Duty loadout of like, this is what I take in every battle. So he also used the 1869 Smith & Wesson Schofield top break as seen in Red Dead Redemption 2, as well as an 1851 Colt Navy revolver chambered in 36 caliber ball, which they actually show a picture of it. That is where instead of just putting cartridges in, you actually have to load black powder and load balls into each of the cylinders. It was kind of a little bit of an outdated pistol, but in his younger days, that would have been what's available.
If you got hit with one of those things, I imagine it like ripped your shoulder off.
Yeah.
That's no joke.
He'd usually be carrying 2, if not more, revolvers at any time. I did look that up. That is true. So he might have had like various revolvers on him at any time. And it's pretty much whatever is available. As like any outlaw is going to have like whatever gun or whatever ammunition they have available at that time. Just opportunists.
We run into that problem with all of the criminal or guerrilla factions on this show is that like, the Tommy gun seems like a gimme. You know, but like technically a criminal's just using like whatever.
They call this one just like the Colt Revolver, which a lot of people associate Colt Revolver with the Single Action Army. So I have less bitching about this one. When we get to the Winchester Rifle, that'll be the real thing. So I'll let you lead us into the test.
Yeah.
If there's anything to throw in.
It was a gun.
Yeah.
So
Handheld.
to test handheld. So to test out unless you're of the ape variety, like an orangutan, then you can hold it with your little ape foot.
Or Jesse James Jr. doesn't have any arms.
Oh man. So there's so many jokes I wanted to make, but I'm like, not on this podcast.
On the pretty good.
Yeah. So to test out the revolvers, they have Joey Dillon shoot a setup with like a couple blood-filled mannequins. They measure his accuracy and his quick draw speed. And I want to point out, after Joey shoots the mannequins, Jeff is the one who assesses the damage and says like, this will kill you, this will kill you, proving once again that Dorian doesn't need to be on this show. I also want to say a favorite of ours, hit the bell, ding, ding, ding. Jeff says the phrase, no reflex kill zone.
Yeah.
Okay, one round in the face, not quite the no reflex kill zone.
And does the point on the mannequin. Give us a frown, Arch. Give us a frown. Yeah. Does the point on the mannequin. So I like that Deadliest Warrior invented that phrase and is like, yeah, no reflex kill zone.
Wait,
that's a thing.
Brendan, can you Google no reflex kill zone, see if you get anything not Deadliest Warrior related?
I will try.
Can I add my new favorite term that gets added? Can I be the one to say it? The one that gets added in this episode when Jeff says, of course, under a quarter second is the no dodge zone.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about guns.
The no dodge zone.
That is the new one for this episode.
Pulls something out of his ass.
The phrase I liked is the programmer guy. What exactly was it, Matt? He's like,
Goodbye, motor cortex.
like that one goes through here and, oh, what's that hole? Goodbye, motor cortex.
You've been writing his motor cortex.
At one point, so there's like a shot here, and Max Geiger does that line, but one of the shots is here and it creates some blood down the mannequin's white shirt, and Joey Rocket Shoes is like, he goes, that's a Jesse James necktie, referring to like the Sicilian necktie, and then Jeff goes, and you're using lead as the tie clip. just some wacky goofs and gaffs in this one, boys. Just Jeff's feeling himself. He's hamming it up. It's just a good time,
And I will say I was impressed with the draw speed. I mean, I know nothing about guns, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's probably about a second or two.
No doubt.
Quarter second.
No doubt Joey is like, he's a pro. I did want to bring this up, though, because they measure Joey's draw speed. And Jeff says, that it goes past the no dodge zone. So you can't possibly dodge it. But number one, I'd like to see how accurate that first shot was, because when I was watching in the slow-mo, it looks like it goes flying off into space. Like he fires that first shot and it's like,
Yeah,
Doesn't
I
matter,
think that
but he
too.
fired.
yeah. And number two, when did quick draw become a thing on Deadliest Warrior? Like, are Al Capone and Jesse James meeting and like,
In a saloon.
yeah, they're like walking up and he's like, howdy.
Let me
Yeah.
tell you when it became a factor, when they put an old revolver against a machine gun.
Yeah. Because like theoretically, these guys are running in and Capone's guys have got Tommy guns and they're going, bah, 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 bah. And the Jesse James guys have got rifles and they're going, pow, pow, pow. Like, you would be taking cover, you would be like hiding at that point. There's no point where like the mafia guy's like walking and he's like this, and he sees a cowboy and he's like, oh, I'm gonna get you, and the cowboy's like, bam.
Yeah. Well, they do kind of talk about the quick draw on the Aftermath, and I forget what the specific question is, but Joey says that the difference with the quick draw, it's like it's not accurate, but it's not like you're trying to hit an apple on someone's head. You're trying to
just a
hit a
body.
human, so it's not as like, you don't have to be as pinpoint, but it does look like it fucking goes off in like the sky.
Yeah, you watch the clip, like when that first shot he clocks off, because I'm sure they told him like, we want your quick draw speed, so he was just like fuck it, I'm gonna just go as fast as I can. That first shot looks like his barrel is aimed at like the moon, you know. Like
I have watched like on YouTube and stuff before. There are quick draw artists. They have like competitions in those like World Gunslinger Championships where they do like a quick draw where they have to hit a target, and like it's literally like a blink and you've missed it.
Yeah.
Moment. Like some guys are really not that I don't know what Jesse James level of skill is, X factor. But there are some people out there that can like headshot every time. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I guess that brings up one problem with this test before we get into anything else. Joey Dillon and J.W. Wiseman like know what they're doing with these guns, and
The other guys just know about the gun.
Yeah,
that they're
yeah.
there, and they
Joey Dillon specifically is like a multi-time, like this is what he does. He's a revolver nerd for a living. Like our friend Scott Brinker put it to me a certain way, and I wish I could remember the phrase, but he's like, he was bitching about this episode. He's like, it's because Johnny Lufrado isn't some fucking gun nerd with no life. You know?
Scott, comment your original phrase. So we know what you're talking about.
And yeah, Johnny and Meyer Lansky the second are like, who knows if they've even fired a gun before. And just because Joey can like get a shot off in, you know, like a quarter of a second, does that mean Jesse James and everyone that every drunkard hillbilly that rode around with him like knew how to do that? You know, they're like, these guys, they were skilled, they were guerrilla fighters, and it's like some of them probably were. I'm not questioning that, but like for this sim, as all 5 of Jesse James' guys like have Joey Dillon's gunslinging ability.
Well, that's like one of the problems with the sim on this season too, where they do named people with squads. Is that squad representative of Jesse James?
Yeah.
Like, or is that just, you know, 3 other goons that he has with him, or is it supposed to be 4 copies of Jesse James?
Number
It's
one,
all made up.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter.
Number one, there is no sim. Number 2, if there were a sim, I imagine it's just video game logic where it's like Jesse James, his stats are like buffed, and like his cowboys have the generic minion stats, you know? Anyhow, they also test the revolvers by having JW shoot them from horseback at like multiple targets. I don't know what relevance this has to the sim because
Showmanship.
I don't think they don't fight on horse or with a
There's no horses yet.
Because they
Or
got
cars.
that car for Al Capone and they wanted like the
To use it.
equivalent. Yeah.
Well, let's get into Al Capone. So the Tommy gun, range 50 yards, ammo 45 caliber, 50 round drum mag, 10 pounds. Yeah, we have
an exact replica.
We have a real. This was actually from Al Capone's collection.
Yeah,
And on
it's a
Deadliest Warrior.
descendant of the gun Al Capone used.
Yeah, this is an air. I mean, the real version. Of
Back in
what
the day,
he
they had
used.
those red tips. You knew they were like deadly.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
red is bad.
Yep.
So,
You were like, oh, it's a red tip variant. This guy means business. He's with the Chicago outfit.
they called them readies. They're like, he's got the ready.
So when they introduce the Tommy gun, they tell a story about the St. Valentine's Day massacre. You want to go into that at all, Craig?
Yeah, I figured because we already covered the Tommy gun, I might do a little more research on the St. Valentine's Day massacre. One thing I'll say about the Tommy gun real quick, though, is they don't talk about in the stats the fire rate, which is like the trademark characteristic of the Tommy gun.
The chopper.
They specifically don't include rate of fire, which they do include in Mafia vs. Yakuza. Like, you remember they had the goof with the Sten gun where they gave it like 2 shots a minute or whatever. They don't put that stat in here, which is interesting, and I have more to say about that a little
Johnny
bit
and
later.
what's his name say it repeatedly, but they keep ignoring them.
Yeah.
So the St. Valentine's Day massacre, it was a hit on Bugs Moran's gang from Al Capone's. When one of the people who were shot was asked who shot him, he said, "No one shot me," and then died 3 hours later. So never a rat to the grave.
Yeah. Hey.
So the police officers, they say, may have been complicit in order to get revenge for the killing of a police officer's son. A little bit of conspiracy because famously some people were dressed as police officers. And Al Capone was summoned to a grand jury after the incident, but just told him he didn't feel well enough to attend. So ultimately, he was like, I think he was charged with some crime for like faking an illness. So they didn't just like give it up. But
Is that a crime? Faking an illness?
What if Al Capone, like, what if that's the one time he didn't lie? Like, he woke up that morning and had diarrhea. Like, he was like, yeah,
he had COVID 19.
his wife or girlfriend or whatever is like, Al, stay home with me and, make sweet love to me. And Al's like, I can't, babe. I got a court date I got to get to. I don't want to let the judge down on this one. And then he's driving and he's just like, oh.
Shouldn't have ate that bad pasta.
Yeah. That day old frigioli.
Shouldn't have ate that pasta that I hit that guy with a baseball bat over.
Yeah. His brain was on that spaghetti. So the next time your significant other asks you what date you're going on or, what gift you got them for St. Valentine's Day, you tell them you're in mourning for the people that died that day. Tell them you couldn't think straight because your mind was just wrapped around the souls that Al Capone took from this earth.
And John Lufrado.
Yeah.
How many people died during that?
I think like 7.
Yeah, it wasn't as much. Like, you think massacre, you hear that, you're like, oh my God.
All these civilians
That's what I was thinking,
died.
and I saw
like-
the replay of it, or like the video where there's like 6 people just huddled against a wall. I was like, wow.
It's also weirdly, I remember it being in like elementary school textbooks. Like it's like this famous event in American history, I guess. And I thought like civilians died, but it was all gangsters. Not that they're not people, but like massacre, you think it's like a mass shooting.
It's like, before TV was super mainstream, people had to get their TV from this stuff. And, say the Valentine's Day Massacre is like the Red Wedding, but if you lived in 1920 and died of the smallpox at age like 5, you're like, did you see the St. Valentine's Day Massacre? Shit was wild, dude. That was my favorite character.
Oh, I got to get a little point off, too, while I'm thinking about it. Because Johnny Lufrado watches the 45 long Colt. He watches, like, the test. And he's like, that doesn't have enough power. But he's firing a 45 ACP in a typical ballistics testing. This is for the nerds out there. The 45 long Colt will deliver 411 foot-pounds, and a 45 ACP from the Tommy gun will deliver around 326 foot-pounds.
If you've ever seen them, a 45 ACP is like this big, and a 45 long Colt is like it's longer.
I think he's combining the amount of bullets that would have been in the
I know what he's trying for, but the whole lack of, he's like, it doesn't have power.
So before they have Lansky test the gun, Johnny Lufrado's talking about it, and sad trombone, hit it. Guys, I've been keeping track, and I'm not going to stop. We have another homophobia alert on Deadliest Warrior.
You guys think you're ready for this?
Oh, we're ready. I'm ready.
Cowboys are going back to Brokeback Mountain.
Another hilarious and original bit from one of our experts on this show. I don't need to say any more because I've already talked about it in previous episodes, especially in the Alexander the Great episode where every line is like a phallic reference. A reminder to our listeners, it's okay to be gay.
Yeah.
You heard it from here. You heard it from here first, okay?
And I thought Al Capone was the one with the mind of a 12-year-old, but no, it was Johnny Lufrado.
So syphilis. So they have Lansky test the Tommy gun against another mannequin setup. It's kind of hilarious to watch him shoot because he doesn't know what he's doing. The gun is like up here, and like the sights are like parallel with his forehead. He's like going like this, like I don't know if like he started down here, and once he squeezed that trigger, he's like, oh shit, fuck. That gun just started like rising in his hands. But it's pretty funny to watch him. Like he's obviously struggling with it. So they look at it and they remark that it's kind of sloppy compared to the revolvers because it's got a slower quick draw and not as many shots hit, which is funny because when they do this test with the Mafia, experts, like in the Mafia episode, they can't get enough of the Tommy gun. Like they're like, just absolute death. All these people are shredded.
Gets like 800 kills.
Do they fake the results from this one? Because there's like 1 hole per target.
And the car driving one.
I'm convinced that the car driving one is definitely fake.
Yeah. There's no way only 1 hole per target.
Yeah, I didn't,
for 50 rounds.
think about that until Matt said it earlier. But whenever I was watching it, I'm like, those pieces of cardboard are going to be gone. It's just going to be in half, and then surprisingly, one shot.
Or do you think so?
They literally, like, the narrator's like, only 1 shot hit each target, and it's like, that seems made up.
Either he's really
and it's
bad,
like it's not a shot on like the edge of the paper or
It's like
something.
dead center.
It's like
on like every
1 shot dead center of the chest and then nothing else on the target.
Here's my theory. I'm gonna do a quick analysis. It's probably not gonna be true, but you'll see in the edit. I have a feeling that like the tests with the car probably isn't like safe unless you're maybe a stunt actor.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like normal tests, it's like you got to be super clear and you got to be in a standing position or whatever. And so to fire like a gun like that out of a car for John Lufrado, who's not like a weapons expert, is probably not like allowed. I wonder if they use the Colt dummies.
Probably. Yeah.
I want to see the bullet placement, and if it is, that'd be fucking
That's
crazy.
interesting. Like they use the same. That's really interesting.
Debunk you now, Craig. That's not true. I remember one specifically from the Tommy gun that was in the top left corner, and J.W. Wiseman wouldn't hit the top left corner.
Forget about it.
But the car was actually from like Al Capone.
So we'll get to the car in a second.
Wait, Brandon, real quick. Do you see anything about the no reflex kill zone?
I did. There was some stuff on a SWAT website about it, and then
They got it from the episode.
The first thing that came up was about how to humanely butcher your cow.
Oh.
I like the little thing in no reflex kill zone for your cow.
Well, any cow butchery aside, Johnny actually correctly points out, because like the Jesse James experts are very critical of the Tommy gun sloppiness, and Johnny's like, well, this is just like a regular guy shooting a gun. It's not like an expert, which I guess we've already kind of tackled. It sort of stains this whole episode. It very much reminds me of when like Sonny Puzikis is testing against Scotty Collins, and it's like Scotty Collins, a guy, versus Sonny Puzikis, former commando, does this shit every day and puts it on YouTube or whatever. And who can shoot 3 targets faster? Probably the guy that does this every day. So they clock Lansky's quick draw at like close to half a second. It's like 0.469, and which is much slower than Joey's. I not only wonder the relevancy this would hold to the sim at all, I also want to point this out. When you watch this stuff in slow-mo, they put them side by side so you can see how much quicker Joey's draw is. So Joey shoots, right? And then like quarter of a second later, Meyer Lansky shoots, and you just see that Tommy gun start to empty fucking rounds by the dozen. And he's put like 30 rounds downrange before Joey's second shot goes off. It's kind of interesting, like how many rounds that Tommy gun is getting out in the time that it takes Joey just to go like this again, which we know he can do fast. So again, rounds per minute, it's very interesting that they don't cover the obvious advantage that a machine gun has over a revolver.
But Matt, you're forgetting that if we rush that guy to a trauma center, we can save this
guy. Yeah.
Let's get to that. I just kind of wanted to point out that it seems like a cherry-picked statistic, and we do get, Lansky does mention in his buttery voice, you can't beat the 700 round per minute Tommy like I got. I wish I could do his voice.
They just ignore that stat.
Yeah,
the third time.
They're like, okay, on to the check out this car. We've got a Model T here.
But that's the no dodge zone, though.
So to respond to the horseback shooting, Johnny's like, we've got speed of our own, and it doesn't go to the bathroom in the streets. And they do like Michael Bay shots of this like car coming in, and apparently it's a 1929 Hudson Super 6. And Max introduces it by saying, a hit never looked this good. So they claim that this is from Al Capone's like actual collection. Like he drove this or rode around in it.
Badass.
Put in the LA Noir doubt button.
So here's the thing. I did not bother fact checking it because I was about to. And then I thought, you know what? Both scenarios are really funny because the first scenario is that Deadliest Warrior got this random old timey car and was like, drove it to a field, and they were like, "Yeah, this is Al Capone's actual car."
No, it's like Al Capone's brother.
And the second scenario is that it is Al Capone's car. Like Al Capone was like doing cocaine and getting head in the back of like this Model T, and now like 100 years later, the guys on Deadliest Warrior are having Johnny Lufrado do a drive-by test.
Hey, it fit it on Spike TV then.
Yeah. Well, I keep going back and forth because on one hand, like, I think
when Al bought that at the dealership, he's like, someday this is going to be on Spike TV.
Right before 1,000 Ways to Die.
And I'm going to lose to a cowboy.
Yeah. So on one hand, it's like, well, if it was fake, then why would they say it was his brother's? Why wouldn't they say it was Al Capone's? But on the other, were they like, okay, it's more believable if we say it's his brother's?
No one can fact check it if we say it's his brother's. You know?
I like we get the line too. Jeff goes, "Start the car," and I was slowly hoping there'd be like a guy in front of it, like cranking the thing.
So, yeah, I definitely think this test is fake, and I think it's because like it's not safe for Johnny to do. And I was checking really hard to make sure it was Johnny. He is shooting, but he's probably firing like blanks out of the gun. And then they just took like 3 targets, shot them one time in specific spots, or took a screwdriver and poked it. And they were like, "Oh, this is where the shots went." And when they are reviewing those shots, we do get Armand Dorian. One guy gets hit like right here with a Tommy gun, and Dorian goes, "Yeah, if we can get this guy to trauma center, we could save him." I'm like, fuck off. Number one, that's not how this works. Isn't this like a battle to the death in a computer?
They seem to forget it's like a supposed to be like a one-on-one or like squad-on-squad battle to the death.
Number two, what time period are they fighting in now? Are they taking him to LA Trauma Center now? They're like
a little house on the prairie. Just
like
it will put a leech on there. It'll suck out the bad blood.
Yeah, ridiculous. And
we prayed over him all night. It did make it.
The reason I'm going on such a tangent, it didn't work. The reason I'm going on such a tangent is because earlier in this episode, Armand says weapons were more lethal back in Jesse James' time because you couldn't get to a hospital, so if you got shot, you would die. And
are they on 2 separate planes of time?
He said lead bullets. She's like, yeah, that would be even more deadly back then.
You'd get lead poisoning or whatever. Like, he mentions the fact that there is no hospital, and then in this, he's like, I could save him. I could save this guy. I could pull the bullet out of his cheek. It's like,
they had like whiskey for like and for like
basic an ear nail.
Basically, my theory is the Tommy gun got so many kills when they had it in season 1, and they wanted to rig this for Jesse James to win because he's probably more likable than Al Capone. Based on like legend or whatever. And they had to nerf the Tommy gun to make this seem more even. They couldn't just like show the Tommy gun ripping like a room full of people to shreds and then Joey Dillon going like, "Yeah, but watch how fast I can spin this." Because then it would be like, well, that gun's gonna destroy the Jesse James gang. They had to like nerf it as much as possible to make it seem like, well, yeah, this is a better gun, but like, who's the Jesse James gang? They can kill the Capone gang before they can even aim it.
You know what's funny too? This is like a pretty bad comparison when you're talking about 2 weapons. This is by far the most appropriate like comparison of 2 weapons on this episode. It gets infinitely worse from here.
Only gets worse.
So I know you can point this out about pretty much everything that they do on this show, but when you have the people all in a line and you're either on horseback or in a car, the next 4 people can move out of the way.
They wouldn't just stand there.
Right. Unless you line them up in an open field. Like
now you're getting there, RJ.
You're still just gonna be standing there.
Wait, the show's stupid?
Wouldn't there be like lookouts too? Do you think? Just like lookouts.
They would have lookouts.
Or maybe they do have weapons actually in the little pictures of themselves.
Yeah, right. They'd shoot back.
I love whenever he like misses on the horse on like 2 guys and they're like, this guy's giving you trouble.
This bearded man's giving it.
He's like, dadgummit. I didn't kill him. I didn't shoot him.
And they said something like, "There's 2 dead," and I thought they were gonna talk shit on him. And they're like, "Not too shabby." All right.
So between weapons, I guess we'll have to say they give the edge to the Tommy gun. Jeff argues for the edge to go to the Colts.
Cool.
Probably because based on like what they saw. Like, do we have anything to say about?
At least he admits it's controversial. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a dark horse here. Or whatever.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna grow some balls.
Yeah.
See,
You know?
I mean, it comes into the whole thing of the show: is it the weapon or is it the
man.
Because if it's the man, then it's a lot closer than it seems. But
Yeah.
weapons. I mean, it's not.
Because then Johnny's point about anyone could pick up like the Tommy gun without practice, like I think that's a very good point that he makes. Because like, what are we talking about? Like Al Capone probably wasn't like with the Tommy gun, but if you look at the average skill and the ability for a bunch of like mobsters to use a Tommy gun versus the ability for a bunch of hillbillies to quick draw their pistol, like the Tommy gun people are gonna be more effective with that weapon.
Yeah.
So,
The only thing
No
Al's,
dodge zone.
Yeah. The only thing Al's spinning is his fork in the spaghetti. All right. Edge.
We get a boo or something.
Yeah, right. Womp, womp, womp. Anyways.
yeah, we gotta move on.
so-
Brandon, what are we at right now?
1 hour 15.
Oh Jesus Christ!
Well, that
So-
was the longest segment.
That was yeah.
I don't know,
So
this segment has potential.
so moving on from the Tommy gun debate, between weapons, we get a couple funny things, I thought. So at 1825 timestamp, we see Lansky wielding the Remington 870 used by the GSG-9, which I just thought was funny. That's just laying around. Which I theorize is just someone on the cruise shotgun that they brought in. And so they've just kept it in the studio. Like, I mean, we can use it again. Bill, we already put your shotgun in the show. But like, I'm just saying it would be okay. Like I brought some ammo for it.
Just pick it up. Use that as an insert.
Just get a shot of it. Come on, I want to show my kids. Second thing I want to talk about.
That'd be Lucas on the set.
So Wiseman claims that the James Gang was different from most because they were a democracy where everyone had each other's backs.
Unless you were black.
Then they show Jesse James leading a train robbery. Now, you already answered my question earlier. Did they rob trains?
Yes.
He was more known for train robberies, you said. Than...
I mean, that's debatable, I guess. But yeah, they did do like a famous long stint of like train robberies.
Robbing a train, I think, is objectively cooler and sexier than robbing a bank, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's what you think of like cowboys like riding along and you jump onto the train.
yeah, it's just cooler. You know, a bank is like anybody could rob a bank, you know. I did one this morning. RJ and Lucas, was the James Gang a democracy?
I mean, it was mostly family members.
Yeah,
So
I guess.
kind of, yeah.
They're trying to like establish this juxtaposition where like the James Gang is like all has each other's backs in a way, and then Al Capone like ruled with an iron fist.
Yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on that.
Yeah.
And you talk about this a lot, which I think is important, is like the storylines, like kind of how like the NFL, like every like primetime game, they try to do like a storyline of
Yeah.
it, like it's like a written TV show. That's like what this is. Yeah, they'll try to paint.
Well, the thing for this is like, who cares?
Yeah, right.
for what we're doing, why do I care about it?
I vote we shoot that guy next.
Isn't every like small gang a democracy until they just decide to cut someone out?
Yeah,
Like-
yeah. Until there's a leader. Yeah. The other thing we get, Craig, is we hear a story about Capone inviting a couple gang members of his who he suspects of treachery over for dinner. And then he makes them feel at ease, has them sit down, they're eating, and then he pulls out a baseball bat and kills them. Can you speak to the validity of... Would you like to defer your motion to trust the validity of your accusations?
I mean,
Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I like it's one of those things. The when I was researching him and reading like the different, like everything between like him going to prison and like getting into the mafia, it was just like then he targeted this gang and this gang got involved and then this gang and then like it's very difficult to kind of parse. I mean, stories like that are interesting, but I mean, it's one of those stories that I'm sure is in like a book somewhere.
Yeah. It's like its own secret society that you'll never know unless you're in it.
Well, what we do know is that Jesse James, if he suspected you of treachery, took a vote on it and didn't just beat you over the head with a club. And that's important for this episode. So let's get into it. Rivaling the E-Tool for the most infamous weapon on this show.
This is going to be cathartic.
The stiletto. Labeled as, keep this in mind, 5 inches. Keep that stat in mind. 6 ounces with a steel blade. So, probably the most infamous weapon to our group. Johnny Lufrado intros the knife by remarking on the intimidating noise. And he like clicks it, but there's not like a mic next to it, so it's like a really quiet, like it's like
The stiletto. Sharp, easy to conceal, very deadly. What I like about this knife is the noise.
Yikes.
What an intimidating, wonderful noise.
like
What a beautiful noise.
he's like, what a beautiful noise. Yeah, and everyone with him pretends to be like frightened. They're like, Jesus. So, Craig, any remarks on the knife before we talk about the test?
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a dud, but it was so much detail. It was almost like researching when I did the katana, where it was like a lot of information. So it dates back to the 15th century. It comes from the Latin stylus, which was a writing instrument. So just, pointing to like the thin nature of it. It was used in the late Middle Ages by knights as a secondary weapon, and it would often be used to finish off an enemy going between the armor, like
the ribs.
Yeah, like their eye slit or chainmail. So a lot of different uses, kind of like their secondary. It was later used in Italy by assassins, and it was favored for its silence and concealability. France employed it in World War I, and versions of it were used by Britain and the U.S. in World War II. Now, here's where it gets interesting with what's used in the show. What Johnny is using is a switchblade, which is a version of the stiletto, and that really didn't come to prominence until the 50s, which is after Al Capone died.
Interesting.
So, like, whenever
you mean to tell me Deadliest Warrior got it wrong to give us something we've seen in a movie before?
I'm out of here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I think you think of like greasers. That's the classic like switchblade, and that's what he has. Stiletto is just like a tiny knife, and there was no like click. So could they have had like these switchblades back then? Like maybe, but it's not like it did not come to prominence until the 50s. So yeah, Al Capone likely had access to some sort of knife to like execute people, but it was not the. What a beautiful noise.
Do you remember that?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Do you remember that cool ass kid in like elementary school who got the stiletto and he went, but it was a comb?
Yeah, yes.
I don't know if I stole it. I got that off somebody I remember, and I wanted it so bad. It was so cool.
Craig Taylor, crimes, stealing, and murder. So I guess Johnny gets to test out the stiletto first, and he does it on a ballistic gel. He starts by giving the torso a rat smile. RJ's cringing over there.
Yeah, okay.
He's like, I'm going to give him a rat smile. This is what happens when you talk. So he gives it a rat smile, and then he opens up the gut, stabs him in the chest. Dorian then shows us a neck wound that we don't see Johnny make. And the neck wound is so big that he's holding the head onto
this
the
guy
torso.
might be dead.
And Dorian's like, you can see that he's probably dead from this.
The whole simulation is is the guy just standing still? Is he tied up? Because if I did this to Craig would move, I would assume.
Yeah. Well, We then get a bizarre shot. So this went over my head until I rewatched it today, and it is like Lynchian in the editing. You guys have to check this out. So after that test, we get a shot where J.W. Wiseman refers to the stiletto as a toothpick, and he brandishes a small knife from his necklace and picks it between his teeth. They don't edit in like any reaction. So like they're talking about the slow-mo, then they edit in JW, and it hangs on this shot for like a second and a half of him going like this. Like spinning this tiny knife that he's just wearing on his neck.
That's what I was going to ask Craig earlier. Is that more like an actual stiletto than what they...
Probably, yeah. I mean, there's no switching in what they had at the time.
Very normal guy carrying like a tiny knife around his neck. Picking his teeth, it hangs on this shot, and then it just cuts to those guys talking about the footage again. I was just like, this is so bizarre. Like I rewound it and watched it like 3 or 4 times. But.
Yeah. One thing I will say, this is kind of a minor tangent, but at first I wondered if JW and Joey. Is that Joey Dillon?
Rocket Shoes.
Yeah, Rocket Shoes.
Yeah, Rocket Shoes.
If that was wardrobe where they dress like that every day with the cowboy outfit. Joey Rocket Shoes in the aftermath just wears normal clothes. So I think at least
they're hamming it up for the camera probably. But I feel like JW,
if you have a name like that, then you wear that all the time. And
I can't stand people that just wear cowboy outfits just to like, oh, look good on camera.
Yeah. It reminded me one time I was going to get my hair cut at Sports Clips, and this dude came in a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, and he had a gun, an open carry gun to get his hair cut. And I was like, dude, you fucking like, what do you say to that? And I was like, that was probably JW, like somebody who just dressed like a cowboy in like 2020 or whatever it was.
He's a cowpoke. What can I say? You know,
yeah,
he loves cowpoking. So they review the footage in slow motion, and the show inserts these hilarious squishing sound effects anytime a stab lands. Like when you rewatch it, you'll notice it's like.
He looks like he's struggling to like, it's ballistics gel again, being not used for what it's properly supposed to be used for. It's just like cutting gelatin with a knife. But he looks like it's like getting caught and like struggling to cut.
It's here that perhaps the most infamous line in show history is not said, but foreshadowed. So Jeff says the line a little later. Dorian foreshadows by saying,
"This is where I think this weapon is at its maximum potential. It's nice and thin, and it can get right between those ribs, right into that longer heart."
It's a thin blade that gets between the ribs. We'll get back to that. Introduce the Bowie knife. 9 inches, 1.5 pounds steel blade, or as they pronounce it on the show, the Bowie knife. I'm sure you could pronounce it either way, but it's David Bowie, not David Bowie, and we all know he made the knife, so I'm not I don't make the rules, people. Before the test, Max questions if the Bowie knife is just overcompensation cowboy style. As I've remarked in the past, this show only, like, the experts have 2 sets of jokes: dick sizes and gay jokes. And
that's Spike TV,
yep,
baby.
check. We've checked them both off here. So JW then proceeds to absolutely shred a hanging pig carcass with this Bowie knife, ending the test by throwing the knife into the target. Dorian comes over and specifically remarks that the knife goes through multiple sets of ribs. Keep that in mind. We then proceed to see no debate between any of the experts. Like, Johnny talks about it a little bit, like, oh, it's big and unwieldy. Or I think he calls it a sword at one point, which is kind of funny.
JW's like, yeah, for a man of your size, it's a sword.
Yeah, and watching this for the first, burned. Watching this for the first time, you're like, well, Bowie knife's going to get the edge, because there is a rule on Deadliest Warrior. When it's a melee weapon, like 9.9 times out of 10, the bigger blade gets the edge. Like the bigger sword, the bigger spear, they always give that the edge. We've just hit 0.1. No debate. We get a single cut of Jeff saying what may be the dumbest line in history of the show. I'm just going to read it verbatim to do justice, and I'm sure Craig will put the clip in. Sure, the Bowie knife did more damage, but the stiletto has that critical 3-inch blade that you need to get inside between the ribs to the soft, squishy parts, and it's concealable. Edge, stiletto.
Sure, the Bowie knife did more damage, but the stiletto has that critical 3-inch blade that you need to get inside between the ribs to the soft, squishy parts, and it's concealable. Edge, stiletto.
Don't want to cut through the ribs, just get in between them.
I want to read that again. Sure, the Bowie knife did more damage, but the stiletto has that critical 3-inch blade. Lets you get inside between the ribs to the soft it's concealable. Nothing he said makes any sense, and none of it is anything short of completely absurd. First off, when does this show not give it to the bigger knife? Second off, when does it not give it to the weapon that causes more damage? And third off, when is concealability ever mattered in this show?
That's the thing. They just pick and choose the stats. They chose to forget like how many rounds a minute Tommy gun shooting. And then they're like, you know what? You could hold that in your pocket.
Right. Like, Jesse James is walking into this with a rifle on his back and 2 guns like open carried on his hip. And he's going to walk in and Al Capone's going to be like, shit, he's got a knife. Get down. What do you guys have to say?
Can I go?
Yes.
Can I go?
Please.
That's a warning first.
This is a shot for everybody. Get your stiletto gripes out.
I need like 2 minutes here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the biggest fuck up of season 2.
Grievance relievance.
And my second grievance relievance of this episode. So just a little history of the Bowie knife here. It was created in the early 19th century for Jim Bowie, for his use of a large knife in a duel known as the sandbar fight. It was created for the singular purpose of knife fighting and one-on-one fights.
Craig, insert Major Tom behind like Lucas, just very lightly. Yes.
Now, to be fair, I did my research. Was it likely that Jesse James and other cowboys carried a Bowie knife? Probably. It was well within their time frame, and most cowboys carried some type of knife for practical uses. But it's kind of like today where there's many types of knives to all do like the same thing. So, yeah, he could have carried
Lucas is so pissed right now he can't even
The
talk.
test.
I can see it in his face. Like, he looks over at us and he's like, let me say this about this knife. And you can just see him like biting back the bile behind like his tongue. He's just like, so the Bowie knife was invented.
Arj, could you read this line for me?
Fucking bullshit. Are you kidding me?
JW did way more damage.
Yeah.
And the thing they just glance over and don't address, the knife is throwable, which is a huge advantage. Yeah. Would you rather have a stiletto than a 9-inch Bowie knife in a 1-on-1 fight or even in a 4-on-4? And then Johnny was like struggling with that tiny unsharpened stiletto, and JW shreds that entire side of beef and cuts through the ribs, throws the knife accurately, embedding it into the beef. Fuck them, fuck this Edge.
Yeah, I have to say,
stupid.
When we were watching, I think RJ was like, imagine if they used the Bowie knife on the ballistics gel. And then I thought, imagine if they used the stiletto on the pig. Like, how underwhelming that would look. He'd be like,
he'd be carving some meat.
Poke.
Even that, this little fucking bling, intimidating spring mechanism, those break half the time in those things. And your blade becomes loose.
I did look up real quick how to correctly pronounce
Okay,
Bowie knife.
play it.
We are looking at how to pronounce this name, as well as how to say more interesting and often mispronounced words as well.
Can you hear that, Brennan?
Stay tuned and consider subscribing for more learning. This is generally pronounced as Bowie knife.
Okay,
Bowie
it is
knife.
So it's not Bowie knife.
We heard it from that guy. I'm not even looking at who he is.
Yeah, shout out.
Shout out that guy. So yeah, I think this is a very clear case of them giving the edge to something to try and make it even rather than what should have actually gotten the edge. Does anyone have anything more to say? Grievance relievance. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Stiletto versus Bowie Knife.
It's already been said.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
You have anything, Arch?
Major
I'm good.
to ground control. So next up, I guess we get into the pineapple. The Greg, the pineapple bomb.
Yeah.
So you'll notice that they fucked up the spelling and they only put one P in pineapple bomb on here.
They must not give a fuck because like a lot of those stat screens have like every 3 episodes or so have a fuck up.
Yeah, like a major obvious one. Frag radius of 50 feet. TNT.
50 feet, they say?
50 feet.
I didn't realize that.
TNT cast
That's a
iron.
lot.
The way Lucas said that's correct. Cast iron like a skillet and 21 ounces. So right out the gate, Craig, did Al Capone use grenades?
No, I couldn't find a lot of detail about them being used by the mafia. All I found were links to the mafia games and where to find their grenades in the mafia games, which is what you get with a lot of these weapons. Do you want me to get into like the history real quic? I don't
I'm
have
just
too
picturing like Tony Soprano handling a hand grenade and being like, "What the fuck is this? It's a grenade. You throw it in the window, Tone."
much. Yeah.
He's like, "Ah."
Yeah, I did a little bit of research to see like his pineapple grenade only comes up with Deadliest Warrior stuff. It is the Mark II grenade, which was standard issue during World War II for the U.S. and saw action in Korea and Vietnam. And
I
it's
wonder when it was invented then, because this is like 20 years before World War II. So
Yeah, I mean, you hear stuff about like I think I saw something about them using explosives on a storefront that didn't want protection besides Deadliest Warrior. So, you know, I imagine like they used something, but
1918 it was designed.
Okay.
Well, for the Mark II.
yeah. And plus, if it's in the Mafia games, that's not like a scholarly source, but I feel like they probably had more time to do research than
they
us.
probably did more research than Deadliest Warrior.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. They did plenty of research
So
coming up.
as usual with grenade tests on this show, it's completely faked. We see Lansky throw a fake grenade into the set, and
They're like, come on, hurry
yeah,
up.
they're like, hurry back, and they like edit it so it seems like he ran that in like a second, you know. And there's obviously like a preset explosive that's just sitting in there, and once he's back, they just like hit the button.
They way overpacked whatever this preset explosive was this time. Again, a thing I always have to harp on with the grenades. The explosion is not that big. It's the shrapnel that kills. But for like the show, they like to just pack in like as much explosive so it's this big like fireball. But that's not what really kills you.
So they're going through the damage, and it's Jeff again, not Dorian. And he's like, oh, there's frags. This guy got killed by, you know, the pressure wave. And there's a moment where Jeff holds a green shock patch, which is like a kill trip.
100G, I think.
Yeah, he holds a 100G shock patch up to the camera and goes, that's lethal. And then to test against the pineapple bomb, I mean, does anyone have anything to say about the pineapple bomb?
No.
Except for the guy threw it like a little girl throwing it through. Run, buddy, run.
So naturally, if one guy has a grenade, you would think, okay, what can we give the other guy to compete against a grenade? How about a lever action rifle? So the Jesse James gang, for special weapons, gets or it's not special weapons.
I don't think they even say like they'll say long range in the narration.
Yeah,
The only thing they say is the
gave
last mashup. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they gave it long range maybe, but it's funny because then Al Capone's long range weapon is a grenade.
I peeked over at Craig's notes and I saw long range with a question mark after.
Yeah. So Winchester Rifle, range 250 yards, ammo 4440, mag of 15 rounds, and 9.5 pounds. So again, Winchester, this is like saying the Toyota car, Winchester Rifle. Lucas, can you tell us what rifle this is specifically, and did Jesse James use it?
Oh, it's the Winchester rifle. You know, the Winchester rifle.
Yeah, right.
Welcome to another grievance relievance of me, where again, Winchester is a manufacturer.
I
There's a
love that
shit
we
ton of
make
them.
Lucas's life objectively worse by having him on this show. Like his happiness level is brought down because he's on.
Did you read the stats? Do you want me to get them real quick?
I did read the stats, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, they say ammo 4440. Just note that for the nerds out there, gun nerds. So the Deadliest Warrior fandom, because they don't say what exact rifle this is on the show. So I had to go to the fandom page, which says it is the Model 66, which was, they're pretty simple with their naming. It was made in 1866, so that's what they call it.
By the way, guys, I don't think we're on the DW fandom wiki yet. Get us on there. Come on.
Probably the first entry in like at least a decade.
Yeah.
Use this is my picture.
Yeah, I want like a full bio of me on there that's like, is married Jeff Damelin in like 2015.
Trivia for me is like had terrible like diarrhea during the filming of SWAT G9.
You can tell he looks uncomfortable.
So fandom page says it's Model 66. This is some very half-assed research by them because the Model 66 Winchester was never chambered in 4440, but was instead chambered in 44 rimfire. So this is clearly not the one shown in the show either, because the 1866 was named the Yellow Boy because of its brass receiver, which is commonly seen on like modern day Henry rifles called the Golden Boys.
Not to be confused with an Island Boy.
With Island Boy. Got my Model 66.
I tripped RJ's cringe meter there.
So the one they use in the show, from my best guess, would be the Model 1873, using a replica of it. I assume this because this is the one most common, one of the most common guns in the Wild West era. It was in fact named the gun that won the West. And the Model 1873 was chambered in the 4440, unlike the Model 66. So go ahead, lead us into the test.
Okay.
Now that we're using a fake gun, you know, one that they're not claiming it is.
So they set up the mannequins in the same position as they are for the grenade test, and they say there's a 5-second fuse on the grenade, so they give JW 5 seconds to take out all 4 targets, and he does. You know, he just shoots them back to back. I think he gets a couple shots in on it, some of them. So.
And Jeff goes, "I'm seeing neck shots, bro."
That's lethal. So I just wrote, like, they give the edge to the Winchester. Jeff goes on a thing where he's like, longer range, Winchester. Greater accuracy, Winchester. Can explode? Never mind.
Well, let me go into my...
Yeah.
Armand Dorian, they do the test with the Winchester 73, that I'm assuming, and he points to a hole in the neck of the dummy, and he says, "This is a kill shot." Then he points to a hole in the middle of the chest and says, "This one will throw you to the ground. Kill you in like an hour." I'm sorry. I thought on this show, a centered chest shot was a kill shot. Pretty sure that would go through the lungs and you would die.
But that's not the no reflex kill zone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Then he has the audacity, no, the balls, to say we have 3 out of 4 killed, forgetting that dummy had a shot through the neck. He says, "Oh, we have 3 out of 4 killed," saying one will die in an hour, forgetting that one had 2 shots on it. The audacity of Armand Dorian on this one.
Oh, Armand.
But they give the edge to the Winchester anyway. Yeah, no shit.
Okay.
These I mean, like, I know this is like not anything revelatory. These weapons are designed for 2 completely different things.
Yeah.
I mean, they bring us up a little bit on the aftermath. They talk about, like, you know, with the pineapple bomb, you can throw it through a window, and it takes, as a 5-second fuse, takes 2 seconds to get in the window, and then like 3 seconds before you even know, like, you know, and it explodes.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can't compare them, and it's a joke.
Yeah, the whole matchup's pretty absurd, and to label this as like long range, I mean, I just automatically start to think of, like, how about Thompson versus Winchester, and then
that was going to be my
a 1911 versus the revolver.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, what's the point of setting the dummies up in the same orientation if one's in an enclosed space and one's not?
They wanted to make it as fair as possible.
And have the guy shoot through a window or chuck a grenade at an open field.
That one is a rifle with multiple shots and the other is a grenade that you throw. Like
the 1873 model, I think they do say it on the show too, holds 14 plus you can load one into it. That is a decent amount of ammo that you could quickly put down range.
Do you think one Capone guy in the sim was like the Grenadier in Gears of War? He just stands in the back throwing grenades the whole time, just harassing you.
And then Nashers us on the insane difficulty.
Yeah, and then the Winchester guy's got to get him like with the long shot, you know, got to headshot him. Yeah. I also found it interesting that at the beginning of this episode, Al Capone,
Snooky, Snorky
Capone.
Al Snorky Capone is branded as the technologically superior warrior. Yet the James gang is given 2 guns, and the Capone gang's only given 1. I mean, the most obvious thing is what you said, Arj. Like, put a pistol up against the Colt Revolvers, and then this bad boy up against like a lever action rifle.
What do you think their actual reasoning was? I think that would have made it more fair.
Yeah,
it made sense.
And like we see the 1911 all the time. We've always talked about how the 1911 is the biggest cock tease on Deadliest, where it's shown in like every episode, and it's never fucking used.
Oh, only one of the most popular pistols in American history to this day.
You always see it, and it never gets tested on here. And I also remarked to you guys as an alternative, I would have liked to see the pineapple bomb versus like just give Jesse James a stick of TNT. So like the experts got to like light it with a match and then like toss it. Like
just like a prospector.
Yeah. Craig pointed out that wouldn't be the test, or no, it wasn't Craig because you were just showing up.
It was Lucas.
It was Lucas pointed out.
Talking about the
you know the test, they'd have a guy dressed as a prospector like with the thing, and he'd be like 3, 2, 1, boom.
Max goes yeehaw. Just like imagining this scene.
And Jeff goes, I'm seeing neck shots, bro.
Jeff's drinking an old-fashioned Mountain Dew.
He's spitting into
the guy hits the TNT and it's like just cuts to footage of an atom bomb exploding.
Damn, I can't believe we're done with all of the weapons tests in this episode.
All the lethal weapons.
No, sir.
All the valid weapons.
Yeah. So I guess end of the day, they give the edge to the Winchester. For this situation, it makes complete sense. But I mean, it's such a goofy, weird situation.
You can't compare them. Like
there's
you can, and they did. Great.
There's so many other things you could have like matched up here. That
all right. The Xenu shorts I always tease. We're gonna have Matt stand there with my BB gun up here, and then Craig's gonna have a smoke bomb. He has to light the smoke bomb and throw it at Matt before he can lever action shoot him.
I'm gonna use a metal BB, Craig. I'm gonna aim for your glasses.
That was, of course, a joke.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Anyways, so moving on, we get into special weapons. They are special, all right. Like much like Jesse James's kids with his cousin. You have the brass knuckles, 12 ounces, 5 inches, solid brass. I find it very strange that they feature this weapon on this show instead of one of many other weapons we see the Mafia use, even in like reenactments on here. Brass knuckles seem like a non-lethal weapon to me.
Oh boy, I can punch you a little harder.
Right, yeah. They come off as something that is, I'm sure you can kill somebody the same way you can kill somebody by punching them a bunch, but like it's not something you carry around with like lethal intent the same way you would a gun or a knife, where like, oh, I could kill somebody with this. Like the brass knuckle is, I mean, Johnny Lufrado says when he intros it, he's like, this is the great equalizer. This lets a guy like me fight a guy like Jeff or whatever, who's much bigger.
That's an accurate statement. That makes sense.
But also a gun is more of an equalizer.
Yeah, right.
I think he needs a non-lethal equalizer, which is what
in
Matt's saying.
in a fist fight and on a show where we're testing Deadliest warrior, like lethal weapons, I find it weird that they brought this on. Like, oh, it's the brass knuckles, I can punch you. And it's also made weirder by the fact they clearly had nothing to compare it with Jesse James. They were like, let's just have him hit the guy with the pistol.
Maybe like a whip.
Well, that's what I
right,
said. Would this be the episode? Yeah, they could use the lasso on.
But they
already
lasso back to back.
Yeah, they blew their load on the Attila episode
Yeah.
already. So they're like, well, we can't do the lasso now. Which, when you think of a cowboy, what do you think of? Like,
Yeah. Roping a
there's
cow.
a snake in my boot.
Yeah. And this is also where they reused the footage. They reused the footage of Mafia vs. Yakuza of like the fat guy in the tub. Yeah. And he shoots him with the sawed off, which is not in the episode. So,
yeah. If only. So they test the brass knuckles by having Johnny punch a pressure sensor. Well, first they have him punch a pressure sensor on like a ballistic gel. And then they have him punch a propped up skull. And when he indents into the skull, you can see that it's chunks of foam. Like it's not bone.
I have a lot of problems with that. One, obviously, it's foam. Two, the skull, it's fixed. It's fixed to the podium. If I were to punch Craig, I keep using Craig as an example here, his head goes that way. The skull just stays in place, so it absorbs the entire impact. It's not realistic.
Yeah, the neck isn't like moving on the impact. It's just like,
and it took him like 5 punches to break the foam.
And it's dried out in like the desert. Yeah. Like, so it explodes. Yeah. Would you want me to get into history? Because I actually have a decent amount.
Yes. I just want to say I thought it was really funny. They, for once, did not bring on like a stunt actor or a UFC fighter to test this.
True. That would have been.
Here's Brock Lesnar.
So, like, Brock Lesnar comes in. He's like, I think Al Capone's a pretty cool guy. I've read a lot about him. In fact, I study some of Al Capone's ancient wrestling techniques to help me in the ring.
His t-shirt he's wearing, he's like, unflex, but I like this shirt.
Whoa! Brock punches the skull and it explodes. And Jeff's like, oh, these numbers are off the chart. But Johnny Lufrado is just a guy. He's like a schlubby guy and like he's just punching this thing and like.
Also, like if you notice his first punch is like the baseline, he like I think he goes like it's very like he like does like a hook.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's trying to like pad the stats for when he like actually.
I don't think Johnny's ever really thrown a punch in his life, and because it looks like someone who's seen someone throw a punch in a movie, and then, so they're like,
it's almost like he's like a talent manager or something.
Right, yeah. So, Craig, you want to get into some of the history of the brass knuckles?
Yeah. So, as you can imagine, how they work is they concentrate the force of your punch, and it's better at disrupting tissue and breaking bone. It focuses it on usually there's a bar across the knuckles. It's where the force goes. But where the force also goes is the grip. There's usually like a square grip that like kind of goes into your wrist, which is part of why I think these brass knuckles aren't really like used as much, which I'll get to at the end. But carjackers usually allows you to break glass without hurting yourself. I have this Apache Revolver, which is the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life. I brought this picture for RJ because I showed Matt and Lucas. It's got the brass knuckles. It's got a gun here. Yeah. The trigger, which is there's no guard on it, so it could fire at any time.
Beautiful.
And it's got a knife too.
Assuming it's up on the assuming it's up on the screen, that thing looks like you'd punch someone and shoot yourself in the face at the same time.
And I was like, it looks like a brute weapon from Halo.
Yeah,
like it's insane.
That's an example of
a real thing.
Yeah, it's French, which kind of makes sense. Like I think only they would make something like
I've actually seen that picture before today, like shared on a meme.
Oh yeah.
That weapon, it's like one of those inventions where some guy tried to create something all in one, but instead made it so like it's none of those things somehow. Like it's all of those things, but because they're combined together, it's none of them.
Yeah, where does your thumb? So I guess you have
on the trigger.
You can shoot your
thumb wouldn't be on the trigger.
You can shoot yourself so easily. Like not even like even if you have it like holstered, like there's no guard, so it would just go off. Like
the brass knuckles make for a shitty pistol grip, and the revolver has a barrel like this long.
Does it even have a barrel?
No,
on
it doesn't really.
No.
It's just coming right out.
It's
and
like
then,
you're the French Revolution. Your girl texts you. You're going to get your cell phone, and then like you just shoot yourself in the leg.
and then the knife's not really great either because you got to stab somebody like this.
It's that. This is like a Final Fantasy weapon, like
Yeah.
where you have the you stab them and then you shoot them, and then you go like this. Oh,
yeah, and then your
That would
character,
actually be a pretty cool combo.
yeah, and then like the gun flies up and your character catches it and it's like, "Wah-cha," you know, an array of light comes down. Yeah,
yeah. So that was like the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I should make that the thumbnail for the episode. So its legality is complicated in the U.S. So they say it's banned, I think, in all 50 states in this, and that's not like entirely true. It's primarily a state, county, or city offense if it is illegal.
It's banned in at least one place in all 50 states.
Yeah. It's not federally regulated, really. So,
well, I know that if you ever go to a gun show, there's always
Or a flea market. Yeah.
yeah, that's the next point. Is that's where you get it.
There's always a table that's set up, and instead of to get around it, like they make brass knuckle belt buckles, basically, and so they're like, it's a belt buckle. Get your belt buckle here. But the only belt buckle that guy sells is brass knuckles.
Well, they started doing that, and they made it's a utility knife. It's a knife, but you can put your fingers in it.
Yeah,
to,
right.
You know, get a better grip on the knife.
Just add a gun to that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they do make plastic brass knuckles. I mean, they're not called brass, obviously.
Practicing on the playground.
But, yeah, well, they use them so they can get through metal detectors.
Okay.
So, you know,
give me back my candy.
like, what scenario? Unless you're a hijacker, if you're planning on protecting everybody on the plane, you're telling me you're going to get out your knuckle dusters?
Mark Wahlberg would.
Yeah.
You ever seen that story where Mark Wahlberg said he wished he was on the 9/11 plane because he would have beat up the hijackers?
Same.
Me too,
but
bro.
I believe it.
Yeah, that reminds me of this is a side tangent. I subscribe to R Heroin on Reddit because I was looking for the Heroescape subreddit, and I
you have something you need to tell us, Greg?
No, it's interesting. There's some funny shit on there.
Can get you help.
and there's this guy I just saw it today. He was like, I'm really disciplined, so I took my first hit. I'm only going to do it like 3 or 4 times a month. And like, this is the one guy who's going to beat heroin. Everyone in the comments like, dude, you're going to get your ass
Why
kicked.
are you saying that on the heroin Reddit?
He's like, yeah, I'm going to be disciplined. I go to the gym. He's like, I go to the gym like 5 to 6 times a week every day for like a decade, so I'm disciplined. It's like, dude, it's heroin.
Yeah. Like, I wish I was on the 9/11 plane, but with heroin.
Yeah.
Wait, how did we get here?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That reminded me. But
I think we're all trying to avoid getting to the pistol whip.
yeah.
The what?
The pistol whip.
The what?
Well, a few more things about the brass knuckle.
Chain whip.
There was a story in like 2009, I think, and I forgot about this, but this is hilarious. So when Godfather 2, the game, came out, there was a big debacle with EA, and part of the special edition of the game, they sent everybody brass knuckles. And a lot of these people that got it are in countries where brass knuckles are illegal, and owning and selling brass knuckles are illegal in California where EA is based. So they had a massive recall, and it's such a fuck up. Like, because
dude, someone out there has got the rare like Godfather 2 brass knuckles.
yeah, how did it get
like
that
brass
far?
knuckles?
Yeah, they were real. They weren't like plastic or anything. You'd think they'd be like a statue or like made of like paper mache, but they were real brass knuckles that are illegal in California.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's awesome. And luckily, Godfather 2 apparently was not a good game. And so,
You can buy them for $8.99. No, they at least that called it a paperweight.
Okay. I was
paperweight.
It was a blast.
I was gonna say GTA 6 is just gonna come with a gun, a loaded gun.
Yeah. And yeah, only thing I want to mention is like with regards to that, one reason I think they're not as common is because it would probably fuck up your wrist because a lot of the force is going like here and like your palm. But also like I watched a video of people talking about the brass knuckles and kind of like demonstrating it, and they're like, you know, like you don't really see people walking around with them. There's no politicians ever been like, you know, we got a real brass knuckle problem in this city. Like, you know, it's not something that a lot of people use, I think, because like, yeah, why wouldn't you just have a gun or a knife at that point?
Yeah.
Even that, just like a club is probably more
Yeah.
dangerous. Isn't there also like in martial arts like a palm punch? So I can see like if you had that on your like palm right here, and then you put it in, like carrying the energy, like you would have more energy in your punch too.
Yeah. Well, you know, Johnny Lufrado.
Yeah. So that's all I had.
Allows a man like me to fight a man like you.
So to go up against the Brass Knuckles, the team finds themselves creatively bankrupt. The only time they've been this creatively bankrupt was when they introduced the AK bayonet in the Taliban episode. They're like, we got nothing to go against this slingshot. And they introduced to us the pistol whip.
Is this less creative than Zombie vs. Vampires?
Debatably.
Yeah. And of course, for the pistol whip, they just give the same stats as the Colt Revolver, but, you know, without the bullet. 2.5 pounds, 14 inches, and steel. And they test it by having Joey slam it into a propped up skull. And they're like, oh, it's a greater PSI and it does greater damage. And
you want my history?
They give the edge. They give the edge
last time
to the pistol whip.
No, this is crazy. There's an extensive history on Jesse James pistol whipping people.
Well, go ahead.
I just got to look at it. I'm excited.
JK, it's a pistol whip. It's not a weapon.
Yeah. Well, it obviously is like, couldn't every single gun be used as a melee weapon that we see on here? Like,
also, it's a verb. You know what I mean? It's not like it's not an object.
Yeah. I also
so
find
really it's just pistol.
I also find it strange that both these warriors exist in a time period where there are guns and explosives, and we already see 2 knives go against each other, and they're like, knives aren't enough. Like, Al Capone's got to have a stiletto in one hand and brass knuckles in the other.
Why not just give him a shotgun? And Jesse James was known for carrying like a lever shotgun also, because it was convenient for bank robberies. Yeah. Give him like a lever shotgun. Christ, give him his bare fists over a pistol whip. Give him a lasso. Give him a rope.
It really does reek of desperation. They're like, the pistol whip.
Include that with the pistol. Like, oh, this is the Colt pistol. You can also do this.
Yeah. And Johnny Lou's rightfully pissed. Like, he goes on. Like, I think a lot of points in this, he's very down to earth. Well, now he's up in heaven, but at this point he was down to earth. And
I don't know. Have you read some of the dirt that's in that book?
Yeah. And he's like our voice, where he's like, it's a pistol. Like,
use it as a pistol.
Yeah. So he's very much, even in the aftermath, he says stuff that's very authentic. So,
yeah.
This was my low point during the episode, I feel like, where I'm just like.
So the one thing before we move on to the simulation that I want to point out is Johnny swung at that skull twice and fractured it.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
Okay. So we get in. Are we ready for the reenactment, guys?
I'd love to.
I think we're ready. Let's get into the reenactment. Lucas, you want to take us into your mind realm here?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm once again your sim master for the day. Bet this will be a good one, not stupid like the rest of the episode. We open up on the James gang doing what they do best, robbing a like modern day or 1920s Civil War museum. But you know they're taking the Confederate stuff. They don't want that Union shit.
The side opposed to the Union.
They're taking the side opposed to the Union. Yeah. Nothing like taking a fat stack of plastic gold coins someone won at Dave & Buster as a prop for this episode. Outside, the Al Capone gang pulls up in what I can assume is an authentic Al Capone car. Not quite sure what time period, honestly, we're going for here. Because there's a American War Museum with a banner that says Outlaws of the Old West underneath it. So I'm thinking maybe we're in like 1920s gangster period and there's a war museum that they're robbing. But I'm thinking it's some night at the museum shit, like they came to life.
Why not?
So the James gang hears something going on.
Some night at the museum.
Dude, that's why they test on the dummies, because that's what they are.
It'd be funny if it was like Owen Wilson and he's like this tall when Al Capone walks in. Who did he play in that?
I think like Julius Caesar or something.
No, he was a wild.
Yeah,
West
Owen
guy.
Wilson.
Oh, I'm
was
sorry.
Like a cowboy.
There is like a Roman guy in there, but
yeah, he's like keeps going. Oh, whatever.
Here,
So-
I'll Google it while you
Roman
keep
guy-
reading.
Never mind.
Yeah.
So the James gang hears something going on while they're loading up their guns that weren't loaded, even though they're doing a robbery. The Capone gang scopes out the most underwhelming museum I've ever seen. There's like 2 exhibits in it.
Okay, hold on.
It's just an empty room.
Oh, hold on. His character's name in Night at the Museum is
Jedediah.
Jedediah.
Is he meant to be anybody?
They couldn't get the copyright. Can we slap that on the screen for the...
It's not even Jebediah.
Jedediah.
Jebediah James.
Is there a Night at the Museum wiki we can look for more information? Oh yeah, there is.
Also known as Jed.
Oh my god.
Personality, wisecracking, witty, and funny.
Did it say he wore a KKK mask? Rock trades?
I think they left that out actually.
And see, guards, there's the little Roman guy. Gaius Octavius.
Who plays him?
Steve Coogan.
Oh,
Anyway, I'm so sorry, Lucas. I saw Jedediah and I lost my shit.
It's all right. I wouldn't have learned his name anyway. So, the Capone gang is scoping out the most underwhelming museum I've ever seen. The James gang busts in and starts firing off shots out of his Peacemaker revolver. Even though it's like 5 feet away, he misses a couple of shots, but he gets one of them. One of the Capone guys dies. This makes the gangsters randomly pull the triggers on their Tommy guns for some reason as they're like falling over. One of Jesse's gang members gets blasted with like 30 shots up against the wall. It's like... It's like what's that war movie with is that Saving Private Ryan or Platoon or whatever?
Yeah, Platoon.
Where you just
that character's name was Jedediah.
The 10-foot away shootout ensues as the James gang jumps over a railing while another one breaks a cabinet and steals a Winchester rifle. Not sure which one though. The James gang retreats as Al Capone puts his hat back on, all cool, like
he's not intimidated. He's not worked up.
The Capone gang gives chase, but the first guy around the corner takes a Winchester bullet to the chest, but doesn't die, because as we know, a bullet to the chest will kill you in 1 hour.
He laid there sobbing on the ground for an hour, regretting the decisions he made.
The guy literally gets up from this chest shot and he chugs on. Oh shit, never mind. One of the James gang was hiding behind a wall and stabs him in the side with the Bowie knife. Surprising, it made it through his ribs without that critical
right, yeah. That is shocking.
The Capone gang catches up as the James gang sets up in a room and another shootout ensues. The Winchester Rifle takes down another gangster. I want you to remember how many kills are by the Winchester Rifle in this reenactment, because, spoiler, it's almost all of them except the Bowie knife. He then presumably takes out the pineapple grenade, lobs it, and takes out one of the outlaws. Capone goes to pick up one of the revolvers, but it gets shot out of his hand with a little Nedry moment. Why would he not just shoot Capone right then and there is beyond me.
And I like that Capone, what was his nickname? Scroopy? Snorky. Scroopy? Jedediah.
Jedediah.
Being the snorky man that he is, Al Capone's got like these fashionable gloves on, and he hasn't taken them off at all for this fight, and he gets the thing shot out and he's like oh hey gets his hands up.
So this gun gets shot out of his hand. Why would this guy just not shoot Capone right then and there? Oh, I know why. Because it's his last bullet. Click, click, click.
Yep.
Goes the revolvers. Capone dons his brass knuckles, gives chase, but he avoids the instant kill pistol whip. Like a boss.
Yeah, he's like the Predator. He's like taking off his suit and like his hat and his gloves. He's like getting ready for like a honorable duel to the death.
He kind of like eats one pistol whip debatably, but the second like kill shot comes in, dodges it.
Yeah.
I guess he wasn't quicker than the no dodge quarter second
The no dodge zone.
Then he pushes him back into a prison cell, and we get a good old-fashioned prison beatdown scene that Capone's probably familiar with since he got bullied. Then the knives come out. You think this is going to be like a climactic knife fight, but they just both drop their knives instantly. We get a cynical laugh from Jesse James as he's getting beaten up against the jail cell to the ground. Right as Al was about to finish him, he looks up and takes a Winchester round to the forehead, then pulls an Elvis Presley and dies on the toilet. Jesse James gang wins. Yeehaw!
Yeah, let's get a rebel yell in chat. Rebel yell in chat.
Ooh.
Yeah, so results, Jesse James gang wins. We have the Winchester with 326 kills, the Colt Revolvers with 203, the Bowie Knife with 13, and the Pistol Whip with 2, for a total of 544 kills. Capone's Pineapple Bomb gets 116. Tommy Gun gets 338, the most kills of any weapon, but just by a little bit. Stiletto gets one kill, and the Brass Knuckles get 1. So I would just like to point out that the Tommy Gun does outscore the Colt Revolvers. It also outscores the Winchester, but it's a lot closer. The Colt Revolvers outscore the Pineapple Bomb by a lot, and that's sort of what makes the difference in this outcome, basically. The Bowie Knife also outscores the Stiletto, not surprisingly, by 12 kills. And really glad we wasted a whole segment on a Pistol Whip and a Brass Knuckles who got a collective 3 fucking kills out of the whole thing.
So even more telling than just that the Bowie Knife beat the Stiletto by 12 kills is that the Stiletto only got 1 kill. That's even funnier than saying that the other one beat it by 12.
Yeah, the Stiletto got the same amount of kills as the Brass Knuckles.
And that's what I said earlier with it took Johnny 2 punches to fracture the skull. I think Jesse James in the reenactment took 8 punches to the head.
It's like a 30-second beatdown.
Just laughing about it.
Also, never noticed this Stiletto with 1 less kill than the Pistol Whip, which got 2.
And 1 more kill than the Black Egg or Spit of Poison.
Yeah.
Very true.
I want to say real quick before we get into the aftermath.
I just wanted to mention Capone, total of 456 kills. This is the 4th closest matchup in season 2.
Yeah.
With a difference of 88 kills. So.
Yeah. I just want to say I do like this reenactment. I think that there is an attempt at a storyline. Like other ones, it's just 2 warriors meet in a field and they fight. They're like a Viking in a forest finds a samurai in a forest. This, they're okay, they're going to be robbing a Civil War museum for their artifacts. And then, and then there's different set pieces of here's the jail and the museum and here's this. So a lot of creativity, I think, in the context of this battle of the reenactment. So.
Yeah, definitely one of the better ones, especially coming off some of the last couple ones that have just been very half-assed, especially DSG-9 versus SWAT and
where it's just they're fighting at a warehouse. What's a cheap abandoned location we can go film at? Whereas this is an actual set. And you also see they put a little more effort into the fight. This is the only one that I can recall ends not just with 1-on-1 and then there's a little twist that there's 2 guys left.
Yeah.
And definitely a little more creativity in this reenactment.
They had an A-list director do this one. It's Ridley Scott or something.
Quentin Tarantino does the next one. There's they all have their feet out. And
it starts with whoever's dead, and then it goes back in time.
Yeah. And when someone gets shot, they just fucking explode.
The whole time it's that Kill Bill.
I think Uma Thurman should play Al Capone in this one.
Uma Thurman.
The producer's Quentin, work with me here.
Okay, they have their feet out. We get into we're doing the wrap up.
So I guess I'll just say I think this would have been closer I mean, it was already a pretty close matchup. It's interesting the Tommy gun does not get nearly as many kills as it did in the Mafia episode. Like, what changed really, I guess? I guess the James gang was killing these guys quicker than the Yakuza was killing the mob guys. I think if they had replaced that pineapple bomb with like another gun, like Al Capone, there's a really good chance he could have won this episode.
But you could argue if they replaced the pistol whip with like the shotgun that Jesse James commonly carried, it would also change the.
I would.
So you have like 2 non-weapons and then like a third like not like a specialty weapon versus 2 normal weapons and then guns. 2 non-weapons. Yeah.
Which is where it comes into where something we always have to say, where you have to take the show exactly as it's presented to you, like with no what ifs or but what if this happened. You have to take it exactly as it's presented.
Yeah. I mean, I was rooting for Jesse James when this first aired, and I remember watching it with a couple people who were from an Italian family, and they were rooting for Al Capone to win the whole time, and I got in a legitimate argument about the stiletto with them, and I forgive them for, that. I think they were just trying to rep their guy in the moment, but surely they would see their faults.
Al Capone's your guy.
Yeah. I don't know. Jesse James, I think there's an argument to be made. Like, yeah, he's got probably more skill in firearms than someone like your average Capone guy, probably. But yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else have anything to say about these results?
I'll take my wrap up.
Well, why don't we do the aftermath real quick before we do the wrap up? Then we can just all
sure.
If you want to hit it,
sure. What do you want to say with the aftermath, Craig?
So I'll be quick. This is a very entertaining aftermath, though. A lot of reveals. So real quick, you'll see it on the screen, but I like to talk about the clothes these people wear because this is them on their day off.
Hey, does anyone wear that AK-47 T-shirt?
No, because it's Max.
What?
Because it's Max, not Jeff. It's on there because they rotate like the people that are on the show.
Because I have to tell you, we last episode talked about those T-shirts, like the past couple episodes. I had a brain blast from where I've seen those shirts before. Those shirts used to be on Jeff Damelin's website for sale.
Oh yeah,
I'm not fucking with you. Those were like his designer shirts. It's like that AK with the star, and that's why it's got like little labels that say like barrel, and it's got like little statistics on it, and it's like
one arrow that says gun.
It'll be like barrel 16 inches, caliber 7.62. Like it's Deadliest Warrior stats or something.
Yeah, we'll maybe on the wrap up we'll talk about our relationship with Jeff Damelin's website.
Maybe never.
So
we'll try to get him on here. I'll tell him in person.
So yeah, Johnny Lou is in a suit, of course, and Joey Dillon is in normal clothes, as I said before, which is weird to see.
Rocket shoes.
Yeah. Johnny is very passionate. Like I said before, and he really seems to care and is trying to rationalize the show in a feeble attempt. So I sympathize with him there. Joey actually says he was surprised that Al Capone lost because of the Tommy gun.
Yeah.
He was like, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I was surprised that we won.
Even he's like, when he's bullshitting about the revolvers, he's like, all right, I mean, I'm just like making shit up.
Yeah. This is minor, but Joey says that he got a lot of emails from people from his high school saying they didn't know he could shoot that fast with a quick draw, which I thought was interesting because, minorly interesting because sometimes I forget like this show and I wonder like, was it just popular with us or did like other people care?
Yeah.
And it goes to show that this was probably a big event of like, you're on Deadliest Warrior.
You can shoot fast with that.
Yeah. Hey, I also want to give my take on that, and that is Joey's lying, and he's just using that as a chance to brag about how fast his quick draw was. He's like, yeah, I had like a bunch of people telling me like that was really fast, bro.
Yeah.
Go to joeydillon.com.
Right.
Yeah. So
a bunch of hot chicks.
Yeah. Into the actual questions. Someone just basically comments and says that people should stop complaining about the outcome because Al Capone is fat. Which is very like Rogan-esque. They're like, first they dance around. They're like, yeah, well, Jesse James, he lived off the land, and he was a scavenger versus Al Capone, who's more of a made man, and he was fat.
He was comfortable.
He was overweight.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't complain about the results. So someone says that, and this is maybe a minor talking point.
Aaron, it's not a 5K. It's like you can shoot somebody.
So someone says one of the things that the show didn't take into account was the quality of the weapon or bullets for Al Capone. So like saying that like the stuff Al Capone's time would be better made. I think the only time that would come into play is if, I don't know if the ammo in Jesse James' time was prone to malfunction, but if you're talking purely about penetration, like it's irrelevant because they're just wearing clothes. Yeah. So who cares how deep? Like if it goes in,
I think it's talking about like reliability of the ammunition. And
they commonly used black powder filled cartridges, unlike what's been transitioned to is what's known as like smokeless powder cartridges that we use like today. It was kind of, there's like a transition period going on in that. Is there a reliability difference?
The show doesn't have time for that when we have to have a pistol whip segment. We can't go into bullets, okay? No one cares about that.
Later on, in a embarrassing moment, Joey is talking about, I think he's responding to this actually. He's describing the revolver's fire mechanism. And he talks about the gun's nipple and he starts laughing to himself. Like, no joke. He's like,
you got a lot of guns that require the hammer to come down on a little percussion cap that's slid onto a nipple, and then it's got to hit the the powder, push the ball out.
Like, oh man, like leave this shit to us.
Yeah, come on, man.
And let's see.
I can't wait for that Centurion episode to come out. There's so much like spoilers.
Yeah. A commenter lays some truth, although it gets sort of disputed. He says that the pistol tested was not used by Jesse James, but by Billy the Kid. He says that there's no evidence that Jesse was a quick draw expert and says he killed mostly civilians and that it should have been Billy the Kid. And this guy also says, like, he keeps going back to, like, this should have been Billy the Kid. And he says that he's also, like, he's going to use Whiteout on the season 2 DVD to replace all mentions of Jesse James with Billy the Kid. So he's still waiting on that season 2 DVD.
Yeah, right. He's still waiting. He's the reason they didn't make one.
Yeah, I know. And you gotta love the aftermath. Like they pull no punches. Like for much as we say the show's fake and like tailor stuff to whatever's convenient for them, whoever runs the aftermath just like fucking like pulls the most like not vile, but like calls out the show, like comments, and you gotta love it. But Joey disputes what this guy says, and he says a lot of what Billy used is actually alleged. So if you see in a museum like this gun was used by Billy the Kid, a lot of that stuff isn't totally confirmed. He says there's actually more myth with what Billy did than Jesse.
World's biggest fucking Billy the Kid fan.
Yeah.
There was
Give it a rest, bud.
There was supposedly a
Just a
pistol
show.
used by Jesse James that for sale at auction sold for like $900,000.
Wow.
So there's
I'm
that.
surprised you don't have that, Lucas.
Imagine
I don't have $900,000 yet.
Imagine, Dr. Squatch, hit us up. Imagine having Jesse James's revolver and Al Capone's Model T. I know it's not a Model T, but it's just funny because it's an old timey car.
Was it like a Grand Cougar coupe?
No, 1929 Hudson something.
Where'd you come up with that?
Right here, baby. Right here.
The Hudson Super 6. There you go.
Yeah. And you'll notice, like, with what Jesse says, like, he doesn't defend, not Jesse, but Joey, what Joey says, he doesn't really defend Jesse about him not using the gun so much as he just goes after Billy the Kid. It's like, well, Billy the Kid, there's a lot of myths about him. And so I
Cowboy
think,
nerds getting into it.
Yeah.
Season 4.
Yeah,
There's a lot I could say about Billy, okay?
Billy the Kid versus Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah. So I guess decent chance that gun that they used, the Colt, is not.
Firearms, Edge, Billy the Kid. Hot girlfriends, Edge, Machine Gun Kelly. Billy the Kid's girlfriend's got like one tooth. She's never showered.
He comes out with like his Colt and he's like, someone give me some clippers. Fucking beard is weird.
Brendan, can we get the sad trombone?
Hey, no. What? That was a good one.
Okay, we'll never get through this aftermath. So almost done here. The viewer asked for specifics on how the sim works, namely like the moves, which I sent you guys this clip. It was so fucking funny to me. This question should be asked every single episode of the aftermath. And Max says, he's like, well, you see,
Max is like, just insert the clip of Neo in the Matrix just dodging.
Yeah. It's like, Max is like, well, I'd love to talk about it. And Slytherin Strategies, they make a great program you can actually download yourself. But see, it's actually a special build just for the show. And I'm under double NDA, and I can't talk about it.
I would totally love to be able to do that. But the thing to remember is that the sim came from a commercial game engine that was developed by Slytherin Strategies. And if there's some people who I feel don't get enough credit for how much work they did and the base that they laid for me to work on, it's them. So definitely check them out. Check out their games. I can say that the sim has actually grown up and is now released in the game. So if you want to, poke it around, you can sort of see what one branch of this beast became. But I can't really talk about it too much. I'm under double NDA, so it's like a secret and proprietary algorithm for the show, and it's a secret and proprietary algorithm for them because they don't want to give everything away.
Which it's like, okay, I guess you could make an NDA as strict as you want, but you're not talking about like, here's how you design this program for yourself. You're talking about like the mechanics of it and like how it calculates the stuff. I feel like that's not any sort of like intellectual property.
You're not giving out the code. Like, here's the code how to make it.
What is a double NDA too? Can you not mention an NDA under a double NDA?
I mean, I guess like technically there's stuff where you can't mention anything about anything with NDAs, but I was like, this is such a fucking lie. Like,
yeah, right.
He's like, I'd love to, but
like, it's a Spike TV show that wouldn't go beyond a few seasons. I don't think they really care what the simulation.
If that sim's even real, like, that's probably why we've never got it, because it's not real. So.
Have you ever looked up that guy's credentials, the programmer?
Max?
Yeah, Max. He's legit.
He's legit, yeah.
I was going to say he's just an actor.
Check out our, if you can stomach it, check out our first episode, Ninja vs. Spartan, where we talk about Jeff, Max, and Armand.
Max actually said he was going to come on the podcast.
He did, yeah.
Just kidding, but he should.
We're willing it into being. We're manifesting.
Yeah. They talk about why the stiletto won, or they ask like, why did it beat the Bowie knife? And then I'll put in the clip, Johnny like fumbles so hard. He's like, like it's like, it's hilarious.
They had to make it even.
But no, because I've been around, I've seen people work with knives and things, so I knew that the stiletto would be effective. And
yeah, and then this also like leads into Johnny bragging about how his dad worked for Al Capone, and like he's talking about like, he's like, yeah, I could kill someone at school and like the police wouldn't come investigate it.
Cool.
Like, that's awesome. And then finally the last thing happens in the aftermath. At the end of every aftermath, they tease the following episode, and so they tease Zonde versus Jaguar, and Joey. And they ask like, who you're gonna, who do you root for? Who are you gonna go for?
I can only guess what the experts picked.
I'm gonna go Aztec.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the one that starts with a Z, whatever that is. Yeah, and I base my historical knowledge on the Aztecs on murals on the trunks of lowriders, and they seem to kill a lot of beautiful girls, no problem.
Okay.
If you can kill like that, Aztec.
That's as good a basis as any. Johnny?
I'm going with the zombies just because this guy is going with the Aztecs. I got to win something here.
The zombies?
He's like, yeah, I guess I'm going to go with the zombies.
Sunday.
And then like Max is like, come on, guys. And then Tyrion's like, well, let's see if they have some zombies with the Zondays. Maybe that'd be interesting.
And then that got tossed around as a joke for like, oh, he said zombies. Guys, we're out of ideas. What do we do? Whoa, we could do zombies.
Yeah. I was going to say,
it's like situation telling Donald Trump to run for president.
Yes, that was the moment. Like Johnny said that, and it got in the producer's mind, and they were like, I got what we're going to do for season 4, guys.
Yeah. So entertaining, still not worth like the $3 or $4 that I paid for it.
Yeah.
Hopefully that gives you a nice summary so you don't have to buy it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that concludes Jesse James versus Al Capone. Does anyone have any final remarks?
I'm fine with this episode. I'm fine with how it turned out.
Yeah. It wasn't bad.
Yeah. I love this episode. It's really good.
Yeah. I mean,
what are you doing, Brandon?
Nothing. I'll say this with the my only thought is like other like named person gangs like episodes on this. Like, what are the rules here? Is it 1v1 or is it 4v4? Because they keep flip-flopping. Max on the Aftermath goes back to the 1v1 where he's like, well, we don't know how good of a shot Al Capone was. Okay, what about his gang?
Yeah, right.
Like, what are we talking about? So they don't even know. And yeah, I mean, it's just the same shit as always.
All right.
RG, you have any final thoughts as a guest?
You want to plug your channel at all?
No, we'll just I'm thankful for you guys for having me on. This was fun. I hope you guys start doing my next idea, which is Bar Rescue Reviews, just another Spike TV show.
Every episode is exactly the same.
We'll get to that after the impromptu jokers or impractical jokers.
Impromptu jokers.
Just listening to Matt's John Taffer impression week after week would just be
this chicken is raw. People are gonna get sick. Shut it down.
But yeah, I chose this episode to be on. It was a fun one. I knew some of the memes. Always had some fun talking about it.
My belt buckle's making it into this.
And
look, show him the foot. Show him the foot. You got the thing on your foot?
No.
Okay.
And Lucas,
you do have those boots though. You do have those.
Not with me.
Okay.
Lucas likes to joke that I chose Jesse James because I like to win. He's not fully wrong, but also I know Lucas and guns, and I knew he'd do most of the research for us, so it made it easy.
All right, I guess my final thoughts are this was actually a fun episode, and I felt like the first two of season 2 were kind of stinkers, and this is getting into the fun stuff that I remember about season 2. So lots of memes, lots of goofs, lots of probably the more interesting experts that we get. So I don't have a problem with the results. I just think they fumbled the bag a little bit on like some of these weapon selections. Could have been cooler. So, all right, well. Thank you guys for joining us out there, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Deadliest Warrior podcast, where we will cover Aztec Jaguar versus the Zande Warrior. Stay deadly.
Stay deadly.
Stay deadly.